If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 21, Alex Stein's Monster, 2. Did I need a fucking dragon? Absolutely not. But not a damn person will ever convince me that it's not the biggest fucking flex either. Obviously I understand that my monster won't actually be a true dragon, but if I had my way ain't nobody gonna know the difference, well unless an actual dragon shows up, but that's just downright improbable. The trick here though was I had to figure out how to add wings and an extra set of legs to the thing in the egg to make my artificial dragon. I remember quite clearly that none of the quadrupeds I killed so far had any traits called quadrupeds, so I had a sneaking suspicion that either there was a secret layer of traits that I hadn't found yet, or traits that made up the core of a thing were not a thing. Thinking back, however, there was one creature that had a trait based on its body design, a slash bug from Bale 3. Multilimbed common grade was the trait in question, and thanks to me keeping the pleasant-looking sword-horned head of the bug, I happened to have access to the thing. I held up the head and focused my powers on the small head on my palm, and my Siren tattoos glowed a bright green, but I ignored that as I locked my full attention on this single trait. I wasn't trying to graft it though, but rather trying to change it to fit my will. This was definitely not something stated within my powers understanding from when I first got them in that vault. It wasn't even like the other unexplained uses for my powers that I had discovered that were in fact more like reversing a facet of my powers to give rather than take. This was flat out trying to fucking jailbreak my powers into doing something that they should in theory be able to accomplish but weren't programmed for. Where did this theory of mine come from? Fuse, the part of my powers in charge of fusing traits of similar types together to get a better outcome. See, at first glance fuse had a very easy to understand use, but I knew biology, so I knew that this wasn't even fucking close to as simple as it appeared. Standard evolution was for a creature to over several generations of exposure to a stimulus such as an environmental factor or new predator mutate to better handle this new stimulus. This meant going through different failing or succeeding mutations over generations to create a final outcome that was perfectly designed for that particular stimulus. Fuse accomplished something similar in a matter of moments in exchange for life force, the ultimate genetic stacking of the deck as it were. My theory was that since this was the case, I might be able to choose the direction a trait mutates towards. Attempting this feat, however, was clearly not a simple matter, as I could feel an ungodly amount of strain on my powers that was by extension costing me dozens of life force per second as my powers tried to do what I wanted. If I had to describe what it was like, I would say it was kinda like trying to deadlift your own body weight without working out a day in your life, all while you had a cold. Needless to say, I looked downright demonic as my eyes glowed green and had veins protruding all over my face and neck as I snarled in stubborn fury against the trait. It was like a dam burst, however, when I finally forced my way upon the trait that had been overloaded and cowed into submission, all that pressure just vanished. This made me fall over as all that tension in my body had to go somewhere after release. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. I panted for a moment on the ground before breaking into uncontrollable cackling like a mad hyena as I felt the trait waiting for my input to decide how it would change. Right now the trait was primed to simply give an extra set or two of legs like the six-limbed insect I got it from. Obviously that wasn't what I had in mind at all, and instead wanted the trait to give an extra set of usable wings, as well as making the 4 already existing limbs of the creature in the egg more equal in size and function, effectively turning it into a winged quadruped. The trait making the 2 existing legs roughly the same size without making the creature have freakishly disproportionately long legs was easy if quite expensive life force wise at 10,000 units. The issue came in with the fucking wings. The trait couldn't understand what I wanted, as it was meant for legs or arms, not wings. It was only after I chose to be really daring and attempted to fuse aerial expertise common grade into the trait that things got weird as shit. In a split second I got thousands of years worth of mutations and variation in data regarding this fusion, which sort of short-circuited me so I didn't see the end result as I went unconscious in my brain's attempt to self-preserve itself. 3 Edenian days, I was in a fucking coma for 3 whole days and nights, a full 90 hours given the 30-hour length of the days here. Ugh, did someone get the number of the bitch that hit me? I asked with a groan when I finally regained consciousness. It didn't need to be said that I was bloody starving by this point and had a throbbing headache I would have strangled a person with a sock to get rid of, so I won't say that. Still I felt, looked, and smelled like shit, which was mostly to do because I had while I was out. Not a pleasant experience at all for me, but I got what I wanted, if rather annoyingly priced. Multi-limbed, winged quadruped, legendary grade 100,000 units. In addition to the 14,710 that it took just to create the trait, that extra price tag stung a whole fucking lot, but I paid it anyways. Feeling my life force drop so drastically did not help my hunger at all, and if anything made me even hungrier. I once again took a shower while setting my skin suit aside for cleaning while trying my best to ignore the gnawing hunger in my gut. Once I was clean, I threw the skin suit in a special cleaning solution that was harmless to the suit but broke down anything organic it came into contact with. I then went over to the food maker thingy and ordered me enough food to feed a small family. I specifically chose as much nutrient-dense foods as possible for this meal. Liver, kidney, kale, carrots, and fatty wagyu brisket for the oil. Once I was satisfied and stuffed like a turkey, I went to check on my egg to see if I could add the new trait I got just for it yet or if it needed more time to digest the previous traits I gave it. Tyrant Egg, Aberration. Life Force, 2130, Developing. Traits: Aphrodisiacal Sweat Rare Grade 5000 units, Omega Body Rare Grade 5000 units, Armored Hide Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Strong Bones Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Minor Regeneration Epic Grade 20,000 units, Enhanced Vitality Rare Grade 5000 units, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Imprint Common Grade 500 units, Precise Vision Rare Grade 5000 units, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade 1000 units. The traits I added now have prices next to them, but the total life force of the creature has dropped. Perhaps it burned through the life force in order to integrate the traits, since unlike my powers it isn't optimized for new traits like this. I thought, seeing the situation. Still, I was getting a feeling of emptiness from the egg, which I attributed to its life force being lowered from what it was before as well as its traits being successfully integrated. I wasted no time at all sending in the new trait I had for it, only to be surprised to find that I got a sort of sense of connection forming between myself and the egg. I couldn't even begin to describe how it felt, but what I can say was that through the connection I felt a demand for life force, not a forceful one but more one of desperation. I quickly pumped in life force, which immediately eased this feeling of need I was getting from the connection. By no means at all did it get rid of it, but it greatly lessened the sensation. Perhaps this was the egg's way of telling me that it would need more life force to integrate the new trait I gave it. A sign of the imprint and clever mind traits already showing dividends, I believe. I thought with a pleased smile. Originally imprint only worked after the creature had been born, but it wasn't too much of a stretch to think that thanks to the clever mind trait the developing egg had recognized my energy signature after repeated exposure and come to associate it with a source of life force, or perhaps its parent caring for it. With this not entirely inaccurate understanding, imprint may have created the connection through my energy channeling. Honestly speaking, I was perfectly fucking stoked about it, as it just meant after it was hatched, training it and teaching it the do's and don't would be way easier. If it already sees me as its parent, then taming it wouldn't be needed, since it would by nature defer to me to begin with. Training it not to shit and piss everywhere and not eat people I know would come easy after that. As a bonus, since its base species was a tyrant saurian, it should only get about the size of a small elephant at most. I honestly had no plans to try and give it a giant trait either, as while I firmly believed size played a part in the animal kingdom, I also knew that it could be as much of a detriment as it was a blessing. The Colossus was a good example of this, as while it was huge, its vulnerable parts, i.e. the eye, got even more easy to hit, and for all its strength it was slower than molasses. The bigger the animal, in my experience, the harder it became for them to move quickly and deal with their own body's weight. With the traits it currently had, this wasn't going to be a problem at the size I expect it to reach, but if it got bigger it would be. Also, it wouldn't fit through the door of my house if it got bigger than that, which for obvious reasons was a fucking problem. Anyways, with that taken care of more or less, I left my house and got started actually researching what planet I was going to next. I was already down by 3 days, and this put a bit of pressure on me as I had a lot of options to choose from. What I needed to do to narrow it down was figure out exactly what I wanted out of the planet I chose. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 50,967. Integrated Traits: Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade. Stored Traits: Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance. Chapter 22, Cockroach. Well, my muscles and bones are already more than developed enough for now, so perhaps I should focus on my survivability. I have 2 resistance traits, so maybe I should grab the others as well. There is also things like my energy projection that directly improve the utility of my powers to consider. Or perhaps I should focus on accumulating as much life force as possible so I can get any trait I want later. Fuck, I have too many directions to choose from. I thought with a sigh. My powers came with this irritating dilemma in that I had too many fucking options to choose from. I needed to go against all of my instincts and actually choose a single build, which is to say how exactly I want my traits to stack up. I admit that I am kinda greedy and want to have all the options, and if I wasn't on a deadline that would be fine, but I've got 4.5 months before my ass needs to get to Pandora. That being didn't exactly strike me as the sort to let me get away from whatever it had in mind, so not fucking going wasn't an option since I kinda value not dying again. Or I could be totally wrong and the being didn't give two shits and wouldn't smite my tight ass for being cheeky, pun very intended. I wasn't going to risk it though, so I had a deadline to hunt within. Aw shit, how do I want to play this? Tank? DPS? Maybe rogue? I thought with a frown. I've played every position in video games imaginable and even some downright cursed mixes of a class, so I was honestly familiar with every way this could go. It was a phase of course, as once the adrenaline high from the pressure to get good at playing those positions in a party or solo vanished, so too did my interest. Now that I think about it, perhaps I could do that build. I always loved playing it. I thought with a smile. HAREM. Odinia 4. Gigantes. With a build in mind, I was able to narrow down my options to these 3 planets. Despite being vastly different, they all shared a single detail that made the creatures on them perfect for taking traits from. They were hell planets. I'm not talking like somewhere that humans could reasonably live with serious difficulty, but like where the entire planet was ravaged by endless storms, earthquakes, radiation clouds and shit so nasty that it was a miracle that anything could survive 5 minutes, much less live there. Okay, so HAREM has a breathable atmosphere but will require either a specialized suit or the devil's luck to survive the perpetual radiation and lightning storm that rips across its face. Odinia 4 on the opposite side of things is a frozen hellscape with an overabundance of active, constantly erupting volcanoes that keep the air filled with soot that will need to be filtered to breath. Gigantes on the other hand is a straight-up toxic sea planet with all sorts of nightmarish conditions below its rough waved surface. I thought seriously. Straight away the last option was taken off, as oceans tended to be a bad idea as guns had trouble working under them, and I very much doubt the place being literal acid would help at all. No gun meant I was effectively defenseless against whatever lived in those waters, so no thank you. Deciding between the other two proved a little more difficult, but in the end I chose to go with HAREM, as while I might be able to deal with the storms, I was toast if I got caught in a volcanic eruption. HAREM was a sort of subterranean planet in how most of the creatures on it lived below the surface, with only a few extremely hardy species up on the surface. Now that I had that choice settled, I can now explain what build I was after. It was the cockroach build. The way the build works is that you effectively ignore any offensive aspects and instead focus your entire build on pure bullshit levels of unkillableness. Not to say it would make you immortal, but rather it would make killing you so ass-destroyingly hard that you may as well be immortal. The build was centered around 3 aspects: elemental immunity, or resistance if that was impossible, physical sturdiness, not strength, important distinction, and finally self-healing. From these 3 aspects you build a being that laughed at any attempt at injuring it, because even what little damage you manage gets healed faster than you can make it. This was one of those cursed builds that, while not exactly difficult to play, made any fight tediously long, as you trade nearly all damage for damage reduction. The reason for this was that while not dying was great and all, you also weren't doing much to kill your enemy either. Unlike in the video games, however, that's not how it would work in reality due to one key detail: guns. You see, unlike in a video game where a weapon shows different levels of power depending on who used it, that's not how guns work in reality. A gun makes no fucking distinction between a baby, a monkey, or an adult. You pull the trigger and that bullet will always hit the same regardless of who or what pulled that trigger. Thanks to this, the build stopped being cursed and went straight to being broken. Can you even fathom trying to fight someone like that? Nothing you did made any lasting impact, and unless they ran out of ammo, the same can't be said of you. It's an unbeatable scenario, an impossible to win battle without absurdly massive amounts of ordnance. The tricky part for me to make that build, however, was that I knew enough about evolution to know that the only place traits like that would show up in creatures is places of extremely harsh environments. I'm sorry, but I think I misheard you, boy. You want to go where? The old man said in disbelief after I told him where I wanted to hunt. HAREM, you heard me right. That planet's got the perfect conditions for the creatures there to have the sort of traits I want. The sort that would make killing me a fool's errand. I said seriously. You got jabbers banging on your head, boy? That place is suicide. Storm there would rip the life out of you in a blink. He said sternly. Obviously I took that into account. My skin suit and shield can keep the radiation at bay, but that lightning will need special preparation. I say honestly. I'll tell you what, boy, you choose a more reasonable planet and I'll shell out the cash to have the critters from that death world brought to you. I'll need to tighten the belt for a while, but it's better than helping you kill yourself," he said, firmly making it clear that was the best I was going to get. It's not ideal, but I can't deny that it would work. I'll still want to fight the creatures fairly though, since I am a hunter and prefer when my prey has a chance. I say seriously, and the old man thinks about it for a moment before agreeing. "Don't you tend to shoot them critters in the head?" he asked with a raised eyebrow. "Yes, but they were perfectly free and able to try and run or fly away or even attack me. I said a chance, never said they needed to take it. Ask Hammerlock if you want, he'll agree with me about this," I said with a shrug. "No need to bring Alistair into this, I believe you. You got another planet in mind off the top of your dome, or will you need more time?" he asked, and I thought about it for a moment. "Athena's maybe. Echonet says the place has a deep history with sirens and even had one as its queen a decade ago, Dido I believe it was. The local creatures probably don't have many good traits, but it would be worth it so long as I can find any records about sirens there," I said casually. "Well, slap me with some butter and call me toast. You actually said something smart for a change. There's wisdom in trying to learn more about them powers of yours. I'll get Clay to drop you off there while your ship gets built from them parts. Speaking of, I had an egghead do some work and they told me you can half the size of the implosion drive and thrusters since the rest of the ship would be so much smaller," he said, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, it made sense considering the size of the ship that an implosion drive was meant to move compared to my theoretical ship. With that part being halved in size, the thrusters also didn't need to be so massive to push it, though I was only going to drop their size by a quarter since I still wanted that 6 speed it would give me. I started packing for my trip to Athena's after that. Not that it required much preparation really, as the place was ruled by monks who all swore oaths of non-violence and was little more than a tourist trap at this point. My preparations were simply a few boxes of ammo, some extra clothes and a last-minute mass extermination of the Ratch colonies on Eden 6 to collect life force, since I and my still-developing beast were hungry for the stuff. The old man was great for this hunt, as he funneled all the reports of Ratch to me before having Clay and a few of his rogues join me on the hunt, which sped up my speed drastically, since as it turned out I could take life force even from stuff I myself hadn't personally killed so long as it was within range of my powers. Anyways, this wanton wholesale slaughter of the Ratch earned me a nifty 529,611 units of life force. I doubted I would put a dent in that amount in my time on Athena's, but I knew without a doubt that those creatures being grabbed from Hydron would give less life force than I spent. Unless they had a bunch of shit traits, which I doubt, there was no fucking way I wasn't going to be spending life force like it was sand slipping through my fingers. The old man seemed to understand this, and that was probably why he only gave me a little trouble when dealing with the Ratch. "Ready to hit the road, kid?" Clay asked me while I was going through my morning exercise routine in the sim room of my house. It was a simple standoff program with me outnumbered 10-1 and the enemies using cover and teamwork against me. I used to get wrecked by these sim enemies, but now I could consistently win all my fights with them and it only be considered a light workout for me. If the enemies were humanoid, I even sometimes forewent guns and used my Muay Thai to hunt them, though I had a higher lose rate when I did, since they were still using guns and I'm not faster than a bullet. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 580,578. Integrated Traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3 Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4 Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade. Stored Traits, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance. Chapter 23, Tissue Paper Castle. Thanks to my sim training, I had developed a sense for gunfights and how to deal with them. Perhaps it didn't need to be said, but unless you were a soldier during a serious war on Earth, you had no reason to actually know how to handle a gunfight fluently. It was very fucking different in my new reality. Here everyone and their dog had a gun and itchy trigger fingers. The further in the Borderlands you went, the worse this became, to the point some planets like Pandora considered it strange if there wasn't the sound of explosions or gunfire. Since I was bound for Pandora, I naturally prepared to deal with that extremely hostile planet. "Let me grab a quick shower first, then we can go," I told Clay after he asked his question. 15 minutes later I was freshly washed and ready to head to Athena's. The old man told me your reason for wanting to go to Athena's, but do you really think you'll find something on Sirens there? Clay asked casually as we walked out the manor towards his ship. I shrugged. I don't have my hopes up or anything, but it's worth a shot if nothing else. I said honestly. Suppose you're right, if I had crazy ass powers I'd probably want to know as much about them as I could too. He said, nodding. I won't find anything about my powers. I said, completely sure about that fact. Why is that? He asked curiously. When I got my powers they came with a short message left by one of the things that created the Sirens. Not a whole lot of details mind you, but the thing made it clear that my powers were the only ones that never escaped. In other words, there has never been another Siren with my powers beyond the first, who had been killed and sealed in the vault till I opened it. I said calmly. Damn kid, that's some crazy stuff right there, valuable too, but you of all people should understand that. Though got me wondering now, why go to Athena's if you know you'll not find anything about your powers there? Clay asked curiously as we boarded his ship. I am hoping to find stuff on the other Sirens. I've looked over what I could on the Echonet, but half that shit was speculation or conjectures with only a few actually useful nuggets of information. One particularly juicy piece of information I found was that those monks on Athena's had a job offer to bring them a Siren a while back. They took it down 14 years ago. Care to take a guess what that means? I asked with a grin. Clay stiffened and his eyes went wide. You think they got one there? He asked, almost whispering the question. I think they either do, or a Siren paid them a visit to tell them what she thought of their job. Considering the utter lack of deaths reported at that time, though, the former is most likely the case. I said with a grin. Present company excluded. I've never met one of those Sirens myself, but I've heard stories from folk that have. If one of them wasn't happy with those monks, there'd definitely be a lot more deaths involved. He said, nodding in understanding. I took a seat on one of the crates that Clay always seemed to have in his ship for whatever reason after that, as he went to start up the ship and take us to orbit so we could warp to Athena's. Apparently Clay hadn't actually ever been to the place himself in his career as a smuggler, which made sense considering the monks wouldn't have any real need for his services. Athena's was considered a neutral planet, which referred to how it was very mellow and peaceful in all ways. The wildlife tended to be friendly or shy, and the weather or living conditions were cool and calm normally. This was ironic, as the monks on the planet tended to call their order the impending storm, obviously not a very good name considering the planet. I watched the ship shoot up into the atmosphere of Eden 6 from the window and couldn't help but admire how beautiful the view was. A vast pitch-black background littered with an uncountable number of bright pinpricks of light for as far as the eye could see. Clay punched in the coordinates of Athena's as the ship rumbled and it began to rotate in the void to face our destination as the NAV unit took control of the ship. Then with a sudden lurching sensation we blasted out so fast the very stars blurred across the window and even vanished to be replaced by new ones. It only took a mere 2 minutes for us to arrive in the general vicinity of Athena's. Fun fact, but did you know that the reason nobody was afraid of crashing into a planet at these speeds was because while actually moving faster than light, the ship and by extension everything in it was sort of temporarily on a separate but closely related plane of existence? It was some super high level shit that gave me a headache trying to even look at, much less understand, but I at the least could grasp the rough gist of it. When we came out of this warp space I got my first real look at Athena's, and I found it eerily similar to Earth at first glance, as it was a big ball of mostly water with continents and smaller islands all around it, while one side was dark and the other covered with the light of its sun. Athena's didn't have a moon, but you could see the clouds moving across its atmosphere. Hello beautiful, I thought with a smile. Clay took control of the ship from here and piloted us to an open patch of land near the largest monastery/town on the planet, which was also where the Siren Queen once ruled from. Some of the locals clearly noticed us arriving, as there was a small group of monks approaching the ship as we landed, and Clay opened the cargo doors. My part's done from here, kid, so I'ma head out. Try not to get into too much trouble, you hear? Clay said before leaving me alone on the planet. Young man, I am Brother Hermes of the Order of the Impending Storm. Why have you come to Athena's? One of the monks with thick blue robes and a bald head and gaunt face asked. Scholarly pursuits, I suppose, would be the closest answer I could give simply. The complicated answer is that I am here to find information on Sirens, of which I know you have. I said casually as I looked around. This place was comprised of white-colored stone in various natural shapes and green grass with some flowers and what appeared to be blue-leafed bonsai trees. The air was slightly breezy and the sunlight was pleasantly warm against me. I see. Unfortunately, the archives are strictly reserved for members of the order and not open to the public. The monk said calmly. That won't be a problem for me, I wasn't asking. I said calmly. The expression on the monks' faces turned ugly. You would threaten us, a peaceful order, just to get what you want? The monk asked angrily. You misunderstand. See, I'm going to go into that archive of yours, but I won't need violence to do so, you'll see. Run along now, you no doubt have someone to warn or something, right? I asked casually. The monks quickly left for that exact reason, no doubt, but I fully intended to take my time walking to that monastery. The scenery was simply too nice not to enjoy after all. It was rather funny when I eventually reached the main gate to the monastery/town and they had barred it with a red thick metal door and a white stone wall nearly 12 feet tall that they looked down mockingly from the top of. I smirked at this and crouched down before jumping as hard as I could, leaving the monks dumbfounded as I easily cleared the top of the wall and landed safely on the other side. You'll need to do better than that, I teasingly called over my shoulder as I casually continued my stroll towards the heart of the monastery. The citizens of the town were normal folks but looked at me in fear and with expressions like they were begging me to leave. I wasn't the most skilled people reader, but I could tell that they weren't afraid of me but rather something else that they thought I would cause to come after them. Do these monks actually have a siren here that they are using as a guard dog? I wondered seriously. PSST, hey mister. A woman's voice called out from my left and I looked to see a middle-aged looking brunette woman with dark skin leaning out of a window halfway with her body semi-hidden behind a wooden window shutter. Yes. I asked, interested in what she had to say. You are the guy that's got the monks in a tizzy, right? Listen, they have a monster on their side that will get you if you keep defying them like this. She said, scared. Oh really? What sort of monster are we talking here? I asked, very interested. One of those sirens you hear rumors about, the girls that can kill you with their minds. She said with a fearful look as if she was afraid the siren would appear just because she spoke of it. Now that you know, I imagine you'll leave peacefully before we have to let our ward deal with you. A monk said as he walked up arrogantly, and the woman fearfully closed the shutters at his appearance. I laughed. As a matter of fact, no, I don't think I will. Now then, I believe there are some tomes awaiting my perusal. Good day, I said casually as I walked right past the monk with a grin. Against anyone else, perhaps knowing of a siren guarding this place might be enough to get them to leave without a fight, but as a siren myself? No chance. It was an interesting strategy to say the least, using a siren to rule through fear when you took an oath of non-violence yourself. For normal folks like that woman who saw sirens as monstrous things capable of horrific feats, this might work, but anywhere else I doubted it. You tried this shit on Eden 6 and the whole planet might laugh in your face before they unloaded a shotgun into it. It didn't take long before more monks started to show up, all talking about how their siren was gonna destroy me and stuff, and I realized something as a result. Things weren't so fucking simple. If it was, then why hasn't this siren of theirs shown up yet? Either they didn't have one or the siren wasn't as under their leash as they claim and refused to show up. My money's on the second fucking option being the case. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 580,578. Integrated traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade. Stored Traits, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance. Chapter 24, Hello there. Author here. Just want to explain the whole reason why Maya is so young here before someone asks about it. So all my research on how old she was in BL3 says 27, which thanks to knowing the time frame between the events of each game. 5 years from BL to BL2 and 7 years from BL2 to BL3. That means during BL2 she was 20 and by extension during BL she was 15. I could totally be wrong, but unless Gearbox themselves says otherwise, this is the best I got and I'll run with it like this. While I thought about this inconsistency, I also paid attention to my surroundings, and other than the monks buzzing about me like overgrown flies, this place really was quite beautiful. The architecture was very reminiscent of the old curved tiled pagodas and pavilions of China and Japan. The biggest difference was the odd modern feel that was perfectly integrated with the wires providing energy and the metal doors powered by said energy. My biggest critique really was that clearly this place hadn't been created with defense or warfare in mind. The walls were short enough a mere ladder could be used to go over them, and the whole place was filled with wide open spaces and little alleys that made fighting here practically a fucking death sentence. Hell, one of these areas was a gorgeous water pond with crystal clear waters and a small island with a single large blue-leafed bonsai-looking tree on it. In the water I saw fish with long flowing fins that were a bright pink color and slow but graceful movements. I stuck my fingertip in the water, creating a ripple on the surface and drawing the fish to me, thinking I was feeding them. Silver red ribbon fin. Life force, 152. Traits: weak body trash grade 50 units, short memory trash grade 50 units, beautiful form rare grade 5000 units, poor instincts trash grade 50 units. Obviously I wasn't going to feed these things, but rather wanted to see what traits they had, and I was disgusted by what I found. They were fucking showfish and clearly bred with a reliance on humans to take care of them. The only decent trait they had was the one that made them pleasant to look at, and even that was functionally useless. I still grabbed it though, since it would serve my pet well if it wasn't hideous. From my understanding, dragons were supposed to be both powerful and beautiful, so this trait was perfect for that task. The lucky or perhaps unlucky fish that I took the trait from also got a decently sized infusion of life force as a result and thrashed about as it grew larger and stronger. I didn't care about exposing my powers after spending so much time with the Jacobs, so even when the monks gasped in shock at the scene, I ignored it and watched the fish transform from the small weak creature it was to the largest member of its species ever likely recorded. Once I saw it start swimming around the pond, I continued my stroll towards the depths of the monastery/town. It certainly wasn't hard to find the archives, as it was literally the first place I went into after following my nose for the place with the densest smell of paper and ink. This place could use a clean. This amount of dust and cobwebs is simply unacceptable for valuable information like this. I muttered, disappointed in the monks for not taking care of their collection of books. The archives held books that were clearly old as shit, though I am not sure exactly how fucking old. I was well educated thanks to the old man, and even sat at the top 15% of all people in the 6 galaxies knowledge-wise thanks to how well I retained what I learned, but determining the age of an object wasn't a subject I had been taught. Still, I didn't mind grabbing the dusty and web-covered duster hung up near the door and begin clearing away the loose dust and webs from the thick-bound tomes. I had to give it up to whoever stored these things, though they did a bang-up job, as besides the dust that I assume came from the door, given how little there was once you started to get further away from it, the rest of the room was nearly spotless. The humidity and even temperature was perfectly controlled, so the books hadn't molded or decayed by any real noticeable amount when handled. I also noticed that there was clear evidence of someone else regularly coming in here, though I wondered why they never cleaned the place. Still, once I was satisfied with the cleanliness of the place, I found a wall near the back of the archive that was large enough and opened my house up against it before entering. Once I was within the place, I turned on the stealth function, making the archway and portal outside invisible. I then walked across the stone floors to the menagerie and wasted no time at all integrating the new trait with the egg, as well as another 2000 units of life force since it was being greedy. I couldn't help but grin widely at the current monstrous status of the egg. Tyrant egg, aberration. Life force, 8291, developing. Traits: aphrodisiacal sweat rare grade 5000 units, omega body rare grade 5000 units, armored hide uncommon grade 1000 units, strong bones uncommon grade 1000 units, flame breath uncommon grade 1000 units, minor regeneration epic grade 20,000 units, enhanced vitality rare grade 5000 units, clever mind uncommon grade 1000 units, imprint common grade 500 units, precise vision rare grade 5000 units, thermal sensing uncommon grade 1000 units, multi-limbed, winged quadruped. Legendary grade 100,000 units, beautiful form rare grade. This thing's going to be fucking monstrous when it grows up, and I'm not even done with it yet. Also, fucking Christ, if making a big lizard into a dragon isn't hard work. I thought with an odd expression. No, seriously though, I had already basically doubled the amount of traits it had originally, and its life force, if you included the stuff it used to fully integrate with the new traits, was easily more than even the Colossus had, and not by a small amount. I wasn't even close to done yet either, as I wanted this thing to truly be just like an actual dragon, which meant I needed a few more traits and a whole fuckton of life force left to give it. The way I saw it, a dragon should at the very least be greater than the Colossus in all regards, so that was my current goal for the egg. Anywho, with that taken care of, I grabbed a chair from in my house here and took it out into the archive so I could sit and relax while I read. I put away my house and immediately walked over to the nearest bookshelf and began looking at the titles. The Dark Times. The Age of Space. Cooking for Dummies. 50 Colors of Lust. Sirens, A History. That's the one I want. Also, what the hell is up with this organization? I thought incredulously. Sirens, A History was a tome bound in smooth white leather and had a blue symbol on its cover that I recognized as the Iridian symbol for the word siren. The edges of the book had a little wear on it from what was clearly regular reading, which was curious. Still, I took a seat and gently cracked open the book to the first page. Book narration. The history of the Sirens is one mired in myth, falsities, and confusion. For many years the vast majority of humanity didn't even know they existed as we were advancing our home world's technology, and the few Sirens lucky enough to not be killed off in superstition hid from the rest of humanity or were captured and treated as fascinating study objects. The nature of a Siren's powers made it so that when the owner perished the powers automatically transferred to a new owner, though this wasn't discovered until after the colonization of the stars began. On some planets a Siren was treated as a living god, and the line of succession for the powers had even shown an ill-documented ability to go to a host chosen by the previous user once they perished, but even now no one understands how this happened. The selection process for an inheritor of a Siren's powers isn't clear, but due to all Sirens known having been beautiful women, there was strong evidence that this was in fact one of the requirements. In any case, this lack of understanding in regards to how one was chosen to become a Siren meant that it was rare for any single planet to get a second Siren in its entire history, with a single known exception, Pandora. No one is certain why exactly, but for some reason Sirens are drawn to the hostile planet to the point it alone has had no less than 18 Sirens documented to visit it throughout its entire history. Some believe that this was because of the vast amount of Iridian ruins on the planet, but the question then becomes, why was no Siren drawn to Iridian relics on other planets? I pause my reading as the sound of the door sliding open fills the quiet that had just been there. From around the corner, a older-looking monk with ridiculously bushy eyebrows and liver spots covering his bald head walks in with someone else. It was a teen chick with shoulder-length black hair and pale skin, wearing a tight pair of pants while she wore a leotard for her upper body that had a boob window and the left sleeve removed to show her left arm, that was covered in blue tattoos. The monk quickly pointed at me with an angry expression. "Their child. That is the heathen that has came to defile our monastery and even steal our archives," he said loudly. I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse you? I am neither defiling nor stealing anything. I even cleaned this room in case you weren't paying attention," I sent back, offended at the accusation. "Lies. Tricks to deceive. You violently stormed your way here, and you even have one of our precious tomes in your unworthy grasp. Quickly, child, be rid of this heathen as is right," the monk exclaimed while commanding the girl next to him. "First of all, I haven't punched, stabbed, strangled, or shot anything since I got here. Second, as you can see, I truly am here to read the records you have on Sirens, just like I have stated since the time I arrived on Athena's. Finally, I am rather curious if you've told this pretty lady that I too am a Siren," I said, directing that last question at the girl, who looked stunned at it. "You're a Siren?" she asked with wide eyes and a voice barely above a whisper. I took off my right glove and rolled up my sleeve to show my tattoos that I then activated my powers to start glowing. "Proof enough for you, or would you prefer to feel my powers for yourself?" I asked with a grin as I noticed the monk's expression turning particularly ugly. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 573,578. Integrated Traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade. Stored Traits, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance. Chapter 25, Siren Song. "What can you do?" the girl asked curiously. "Enough. Child, do as you should and get rid of this heathen already," the monk screamed angrily, and it took a serious amount of self-control not to blow his fucking head off right then. I like to think I was pretty patient, but these monks had been getting on my nerves since I got here with the way they were acting. Honestly, if I didn't want to leave a good impression on my fellow Siren here, I would have long since shown these monks the biggest downside of an oath of non-violence. Judging from her apparent age and the information I had previously, it was easy to deduce that these monks had raised her, which meant just killing them might be less than perfect for giving a good impression. Bang! I fired a shot through the monk's left ear, making him scream and grasp the mangled body part. "You clearly don't use those as much as you should, so I figured you wouldn't mind having one clipped off for you. Want me to do the other side? Even you out?" I asked with a smile that wasn't. "Now then, I suppose before you and I talk shop about our powers, I should explain something that may come as a surprise to you. These monks have been using you to rule the population of the planet through fear of you coming to kill them. They have demonized you for their own benefit, but don't take my word for it, see for yourself. Not like the monks could stop you after all. Oh, and take this, a gift for our first meeting." I said with an actual smile to the girl before retrieving an epic-grade Jacobs pistol that had shock damage. It was just an extra that I had laying about from my hunt on Eden 6 that a jabber had before I killed it. I felt that it wasn't a loss for me to give it away like this to someone I hoped to get quite familiar with. She took the gun from me with only a little hesitation due to the monk who was bleeding from his ear and in serious pain. Still, it was clear that she harbored doubts about the monks, as she didn't immediately jump to defend them from my accusation and even was willing to accept a gift from someone who had injured one of them. Who said I couldn't be manipulative? Oh, I am well aware that exposing the monks like this was likely to end in her turning on them, but it also ended with her trusting me all the more for so easily telling her. I couldn't give less of a shit about these monks, but her though, that was a whole other matter. She was a siren like me, and that meant she was someone I wanted a good relationship with, maybe even hook up within a few years when we stopped being teens. Despite my appearance and mind, I was still only 13 turning 14 when it was time for my trip to Pandora as far as my body was concerned. That meant she was absolutely within my striking range after we reached an acceptable age. Though I did have a concern about that, as I wasn't sure if the changes my powers brought to my body would even make me compatible with humans as far as reproduction was concerned. Different species had serious trouble reproducing after all, and my powers were constantly evolving me into a higher existence, so at what point does it occur that I can't reproduce at all with a human? I was so caught up in my thoughts that I didn't even realize that both the girl and monk had left. Well, to be more specific, she left and the monk chased after her, both out of fear and to try and salvage the situation that was spiraling out of control. It didn't work out so great for him, I discovered a couple hours later when the girl returned alone with a bit of blood on her clothes. Color me impressed, didn't think you'd go so far as to kill the dude. I didn't see it if that's what you were wondering, but just noticed the blood on you is all. I said while clarifying when she got a confused expression. I can't believe I fell for their lies for so long. Can you believe he had the nerve to try and say that I was misunderstanding things? She vented, clearly still upset. Not my place to butt in on this matter, but so long as you fixed the issue it's all good, right? I asked, and she paused for a moment to think about it before nodding. I was a bit surprised when she left for a moment before coming back with a cheap plastic chair that she sat on near me with an eager look. So you're a siren like me, huh? How does that work when you are a guy? She asked with curiosity burning in her eyes. Where to start? Well, you obviously know that sirens are chicks like you, but you probably don't know is that there were not 6 as was common belief, but rather 7 sirens. The first person to ever have my powers got sealed away in a vault while the rest of the siren powers ran free in the universe. My powers were the only ones designed for a man to own from what I can tell, and I inherited them when I opened the vault they were in a bit over half a year ago. I explained honestly. You opened a vault? What was it like? Was it full of treasure? She bombarded me with questions eagerly while scooting her chair closer so that she didn't miss anything. Ha ha ha. Hadn't thought you the sort to care for treasure hunting. I said with a laugh. Are you kidding? I grew up reading tales about Typhon de Leon. Adventure, danger, loot, and maybe even romance. You have to tell me all about it, please. She said excitedly. I sighed but began to tell my tale, starting from when I woke up on Bale 3 to my time learning on Eden 6. I didn't leave out too many details, though I obviously skipped over some of the more mundane or boring parts, like the details about what exactly I was taught. The girl ate it up greedily like she just couldn't get enough. Your powers are way better than mine, see? She complained while showing off her own powers. The best way to describe it from my perspective was a sort of localized telekinetic bubble that she could control that affected space itself to a degree. Was it worse than my own powers though? Yes and no. See, her powers vastly trump my own powers in terms of immediate usefulness and combat power, since it affected something at range. On the other hand, however, her powers were sort of a one-trick pony and only did the one thing though with creative use that could be changed slightly. My powers by comparison were a jack of all trades, master of many type deal. The starting point of my power was vastly lower than hers, but the end point was theoretically infinite, whereas hers had a limit. It was easy to figure out why this was as well if you thought about it seriously. Her powers worked a bit like a super soaker in that she had an energy pool that she drew from to use her powers, so she hemorrhaged energy only but never got more beyond refilling the tank she already had. My powers on the other hand worked like a fast-moving body of water. I took in power and used that to expand my own like a pond that grew when it rained, except unlike in that case where evaporation would drop the water level again, my power never dropped after I raised it. In simple terms, I started out as a drop of water that turned into a cup, then a puddle, and then a pond, and further with no limit to what I'd eventually end up as. Ah, that reminds me, but I want to know if your powers count as a trait that I could get a copy of. I asked, and she looked interested and held out a soft pale white hand that I gently took in my own. Siren. Life Force, 3850. Traits, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Quick Thinking Rare Grade 5000 units, Athletic Body Common Grade 500 units, Beautiful Form Rare Grade 5000 units, Energy Projection Epic Grade 20,000 units, Energy Reservoir Epic Grade 20,000 units, Siren, Phase Lock, Mythical Grade 1 million units. Fuck me sideways! I exclaimed in shock. How could I not be stunned at this status? She only had a single common grade trait and 3 traits that were epic or higher, including her Siren ability trait that was a whole new grade, mythical. She pulled her hand out of my hand at my outburst and I snapped out of my thoughts. Sorry about that, your traits just surprised me is all. I said, embarrassed. Was it that bad? She asked worriedly. No, nothing like that, but the exact opposite in fact. It was phenomenal. Oh, and I can in fact copy your powers, but they are stupidly fucking expensive. In addition to that, you have 3 other traits that I want but are also a bit pricey, not nearly close to the same point as your powers but still pricey as shit. I said seriously. So you can take my powers from me then? She asked curiously. I shook my head no, from still living things such as you I can only copy the traits you have but not steal them outright. So if I took the trait for your powers you would still have them and I would have a copy, a knockoff if you would. I explained and she looked interested. So why didn't you do that right away? She asked confused. Well, first it's not exactly a fast process and second it's rather personal. Without permission from you it would probably be close to rape with the amount of traits I want. 1 or 2 traits may be a sensation similar to getting aroused, but 3 or 4 in your case might directly bring you to orgasm. Learned that one from experience with a friend who volunteered to give me his traits. He acted like he was high afterwards. Also, I actually can't afford your powers right now, so there's that. I said awkwardly as her face turned red. Ah, I can see how that might lead to misunderstandings. She said with a heavy blush. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 573,578. Integrated Traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3 Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4 Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade. Stored Traits, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance. Chapter 26, Siren Song, 2. Yeah, I'd rather not have you getting any wrong impressions about me if possible. Besides, we are both a bit too young for stuff of that nature. I said with a chuckle. You did say that you are actually 13, didn't you? If you hadn't explained it I would still think you were 20-something. Oh right, I'm Maya by the way. She said, finally introducing herself. A rather late introduction, but I'm Alexander Drake, go by Alex though. I said with a nod. That was how my meeting with Maya the Siren went for the most part. What did you expect, some sappy nonsense like love at first sight or something? Sorry to burst your delusion, but that shit doesn't happen in real life, it's fiction, nonsense, grog shit, whatever fancy way you want to call fake. She was hot, yes, but first and foremost I was 13 at the moment and she was 15, so yeah, that's a thing. Second, while we got along fairly well for this first meeting, basing your entire understanding of a person from such a short amount of time is no different from asking someone to peg your ass with a hot sauce lubed foot-long strap on, questionable at best and retarded at worst. Not here to kink shame, but if you are into that kinda stuff there is something wrong with you and it's not a small thing. Questionable quotes about life choices aside, Maya didn't stay for long as the monks came looking for her and she knew she needed to set things straight on Athena's, which would take time. Once she left I went back to the book I was reading previously. The handwritten words did as the title said and went over the history of the Sirens as per this person's knowledge of it. I learned of the abilities of 3 other Siren abilities in the past, though the powers' current users were unknown. The first was Phase Walk, that was a sort of teleportation with aspects of fire manipulation and creation as well. I practically salivated at the thought of getting my hands on that power, as I could very easily imagine how busted it could be if utilized properly. The second was Phase Shift, that was the stuff of nightmares with the sheer amount of technology around. More or less the power worked by allowing the user to integrate, communicate with and control nearly all machinery and electronical devices. Pretty much anything with an electrical current that wasn't biological in nature was the user of this power's bitch. It also apparently came with a sort of shock generation and control as well, much like phase walk did with fire, not the main thing but still present. The final Siren power was phase trance. It was kinda the odd man out though, as the abilities it had actually changed apparently depending on who had it. For example, the first user listed in this book could elementalize themselves, while a second user could apparently create an armor and weapons at will. The author of this book theorized that the nature of the power was to manifest the user's mental image of themselves to reality in some way. That made me wonder how it would work for me if that was the case. Would it give me a tracking ability or some sort of adrenaline boost-esque power? I decided then and there that if I ever got the opportunity I would try and get all of these Siren powers, because from what I can tell they all have an aspect of existence involved with them. My power held change or life or evolution. Maya's power phase lock seemed to hold either space or time or some other concept I can't quite pin down and name. Phase walk was the more likely holder of space though, or might have energy instead, though something told me that didn't quite fit. Phase shift seemed to hold creation or knowledge or some other concept. Finally there was phase trance that I believe holds soul or mind as its concept. As for the other two powers that I still wasn't aware of, they likely had their own concepts as well that would round out this set. My thought process, however, was what would I be considered as if I collected a copy of each of these powers? Would I be a god at that point, or merely just a being infinitely close to that title? I knew becoming a god was possible in this reality because that being had said as much, though some of the details of that conversation were missing since it pertained to this reality's knowledge and I traded those memories. I couldn't help but imagine that collecting all the Siren powers unto myself was a path to godhood, though I could certainly be wrong. I did know that even without doing so my powers alone made it possible as what was a god but the most powerful being in the universe. Anyways, I finished the book by the end of the day and discovered that the author was none other than Dido, the previous Siren queen of this planet. It was an interesting discovery and one I was quite thankful for, as this brief history lesson had broadened my horizons greatly. Maya came back right as I was putting the book back in its place on the shelf I had taken it from. Hungry? I was just about to go home to make dinner and go to sleep. You are welcome to join me on the first front and perhaps in a few years the second as well. I said with a wink. She laughed. Maybe in a few years, for now though dinner sounds great. She said, not denying she had some interest in that regard, before blushing a little as her stomach growled. Oh, you're gonna love this, I said with a grin as I walked over to the wall I used previously and opened my house. She gasped in amazement when the archway formed and the portal appeared. We walked in and I gestured around the place. Welcome to Casa del Drake, my home, I said grandly with a grin. Unlike all those months ago when this place was barren, my time on Eden 6 had allowed me to truly make the place shine with the money I earned from making guns for the old man. Furniture, decorations, and tech. The entry room, for example, that held the food maker thing and led to all the other rooms I had outfitted with a nice table and chair set made of fine oak wood. I left the walls blank, but the floor had a special dirt and grime absorbent carpeting that cleaned the stuff off your shoes so you didn't track anything in, though it needed to be cleaned every few months to get rid of the buildup. I had a cabinet/dishwasher installed near the food maker to hold all my plates, bowls, and silverware and clean up the used dish after I was done eating. I even had a air hockey table set up at the side if I ever had guests. Clay was a fan. Kinda bland for an alien house, isn't? She asked, confused as she looked around. Besides some inbuilt tech, the place was barren when I got it, so I'd say it's pretty damn nice given that. Anyways, what ya feeling for dinner? I have everything, I said, still grinning. What do you mean everything? She asked, confused. I mean anything your heart, or in this case gut, desires, I have in any amount you may like, thanks to this beaut here, I said, patting the food maker thing. So if I wanted, say, a pizza with olives, peppers, pepperoni, sausage and onions, you have it? She asked testingly while not so subtly telling me what she wanted. You want that with white, wheat, or rice flour? Stuffed crust or regular? What size you want? I asked with a wide grin at her incredulous expression. Stuffed crust, regular flour, and extra large, she said with a challenging look. Coming right up, I said, and pulled the device's amber lever while grabbing a platter from the cabinet to hold the food on. Maya watched on in fascination and excitement as the device basically 3D printed out a whole-ass pizza that was piping hot like it just came out the oven. I collected the pizza on the platter and set it on the table before waiting for my food to get done. She looked at the device in confusion when it kept going, and soon a bone easily 3 feet long covered in sizzling meat was made, and I grabbed it and set it on a different platter. I then grabbed some silverware and took a seat to eat. Well, what are you waiting for? I asked, and she didn't need to be told twice and grabbed a seat before tearing into the pizza while I started cutting off meat and eating it. As we ate, she kept glancing at me like she had a question but wasn't sure if she should ask it. You can just ask if you want to know something you know. The worst that will happen is that I'll simply refuse to answer. I said with an annoyed expression. It's just out of literally everything to eat you chose that. I don't understand, are you a carnivore or something? She asked curiously. I chuckled. No, nothing like that, my body simply requires a lot of protein and calories, so once a week or so I have a meal like this to fulfill those needs. You just joined me on the day I happened to do so is all. I explained, amused. That sounds annoying to deal with, she said honestly as she tore into her fifth slice of pizza. I shrugged. It's a cost of my powers, so I'm not bothered by it too much. I imagine that your powers also have a cost to use for a prolonged time frame as well, I said casually. They make me a bit tired unless I push them, at which point I tend to drop from exhaustion, she said honestly. Lucky you, my powers work internally for me, so I need more food. Could be worse though, as I at least don't need to shit more since there's rarely anything left to shit after I finish digesting, I said with a chuckle. You're right, that is worse, she said with a laugh. We finished eating after that and I started to show her around the rest of the house. I showed her my room that had a bed, dresser, TV, and video games. I showed her the guest room with a simple bed and nightstand arrangement. I showed her my alien room and loot room that was mostly empty save the vault key and the guns I had from the vault, as well as a few of the ones I had gotten on my rampage across Eden 6, none legendary. My eyebrow twitched when she tossed the pistol I gave her into the pile and took a Maluan submachine gun instead. What? It suits me better, she said defensively at my look. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 573,578. Integrated traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3 Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4 Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade. Stored Traits, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance. Chapter 27, Studying. I chose to leave it alone since she had only swapped guns without just stealing one of mine outright. And this not-so-little beauty is my dragon egg, I said excitedly, showing off the egg once we got to that part of the tour. Really, or are you just fucking with me? She asked, suspicious. No tricks here, 100% a dragon, or well, at least as close as I can get to one in here, I said with a grin while resting my hand on the egg. The hell's that mean? She asked, confused. Ah, well, it wasn't originally a dragon, but I've been stuffing all sorts of good traits into this thing in order to turn it into one. To be honest, I'm not sure how close to the real thing this will turn out to be, but at the very least it will look the part, fire breathing and all, I said proudly. Wait, you can give traits to people? She exclaimed in shock. Well, I'm not entirely clear on that point actually. See, if it's still developing like this egg, then yes, I can totally load it up like a bowl of nachos, all the fixins. For grown things like people though, I haven't had the opportunity to test that theory yet, so I may or may not be able to do so. Though I can give out life force if I want, I said honestly. And what happens if you do give out life force? She asked, very interested in the answer. They get better, I guess? Like, I know it makes them stronger, but for exact details? Who the fuck knows? I say with a shrug. Free upgrade, sign me the hell up, she said eagerly, grabbing my hand as if that would automatically give her my life force. As nice as it is to hold hands, no. First off, it's not free since I have to spend the life force, and second, you don't need an upgrade, Siren, remember, I said firmly. Aw, come on please. You can't just tease me with something like that and not give it to me, she said with her best puppy dog eyes. Adorable, but my answer is the same, I said, shaking my head. She pouted cutely but didn't push the issue. I showed her my crafting room after that, and she admitted that she couldn't care less about it since she wasn't mechanically inclined. The teleporter room though, that got her going. So you can go literally anywhere in the universe in an instant so long as you've been there before? She asked with wide eyes. That is roughly what I just said, yes, I said with grin. You are like the best smuggler ever with this. she said excitably, reaching for the control panel, which I had to stop her from messing with. I haven't marked Athena's yet, so don't go messing with the teleporter, I still have stuff to do here. I chided her. She shrugged. Can't blame a girl for being tempted, she said unapologetically. The tour was over at that point, and other than play a few rounds of air hockey that I won the majority of, she left. I myself just grabbed the next tome from a bookshelf and brought it back inside my house to be read. Well, to be more specifically, I digitized it to my inventory and copied its contents before returning it to the shelf and moving to the next tome. Much as I enjoy a good book about a topic I am interested in, there was no way in hell I was going to be able to read all these books in 4 months. With this in mind, I briefly scanned the contents of the books, and if it was something random, I copied it and put the physical copy back on the shelf. If it was something interesting, I set it aside to be read physically, like the book written by Dido. I spent the next 2 weeks doing this before I got through every piece of the archives. Maya came to visit every day, but I had a sneaking suspicion she was just using me for my food maker thing. Not to say she didn't hang out for a bit or anything like that, but she had this timing where she'd suggest food at the same time every day, even if she had been hanging about for hours at that point. She also made things very uncomfortable for my hormonal teen self by using my sim training room and coming out all sweaty and flustered. Fun fact about humans was that we, like many animals, could pick up the scent of a female in heat, though we are unaware of it most of the time. Thanks to my very sensitive senses, I was very fucking aware of Maya when she hit that time of the month. I was going through puberty again, and let me tell you that shit sucked when you had someone like Maya around. I hit a growth spurt during one of these days that left her and myself speechless, as 1 second I was just chilling and the next my tattoos started glowing and I gained 4 inches of height in a short period of time while losing 500 units of life force. Not having to deal with weeks of growing pains was nice and all, but it was really fucking disorienting to gain a random 4 inches of height out of seemingly nowhere. Still, the fact my powers worked like this had me curious if the original holder Darwin was a young child when he got his powers, or if this was just something that was there without intentionally being there. Anyways, out of the entire archive there was only 15 books that I ended up reading the physical copy of. The first was naturally the book written by Dido, and the second was as well, though it was more a diary or research journal about her powers. Book narration. I acquired my powers from the previous user, my adoptive mother, after nearly 5 years of apprenticeship under her. She was an older woman who ruled over Athena's before I myself would inherit that position along with her powers. She had fallen ill and had only a scant few years left upon my adoption that she used to teach me all I would need to know upon her passing. She never told me how, but she said she adopted me because she knew I would succeed her. My power, known as phase lock, worked by principle of targeting and control. I designated a target and my powers subjected it to my control via an orb of energy. Through this control I could manipulate space, time, gravity, and other fundamental forces of the universe on a minuscule scale centered around the target. There was a caveat, however, to my power that offered a serious limitation to my use of it. Any living thing subjected to my power could either resist its effects or outright shrug them off. It was powerful enough. The more resistance I faced and the larger the target, the more energy it cost me to use my power on it for more than a few moments. With practice and my mother's teachings to guide me, I eventually learned how to target and control multiple things simultaneously. On the matter of the alien substance known as iridium, I learned from my mother that our powers disallowed us to absorb the material without a special method that her predecessor generations back had developed. The reason for this inability to simply absorb it like most sirens was, I believe, due to the projection nature of our powers. Our powers sent energy outward and had no intake feature to it in its base usage, thus leaving us unable to enhance our powers using the material. The technique to use the material was in fact merely a creative usage of our power to encapsulate the iridium as a target and use our control to break it down into pure energy that was then released into our bodies. It took a great deal of control and focus, but the payoff was that it gave us a massive, borderline qualitative boost to our powers. The rest of the book spoke of the ways she used her powers and even spoke of the special vault that could only be opened by a siren wielding the phase lock power and using iridium. Fascinating as that was, the real kicker was that apparently a previous user of Maya's powers actually somehow tied the powers to the planet, which meant that every user would at some point come to live there. How they accomplished this wasn't explained beyond that it killed them to accomplish, which was a steep price to pay, but I suppose worth it with how long the rule over the planet they had lasted. It was only during Dido's reign that the next inheritor of the power arrived after she passed away, which meant she never got the chance to teach them herself and keep the ruling line going. Ironically, Maya was still in a fashion ruling the planet, since she was what the monks used to keep the population under their thumb, or used to before I showed up. Nowadays Maya spent most of her days either dyeing her hair bright colors, she was partial to blue apparently, or setting things right with the local population. Unfortunately few chose to stay once they learned that she was not in fact going to kill them with her powers if they tried to leave. Some did of course, but the monks had done a damn fine job making Maya out to be the Krampus, the boogeyman, and God, all wrapped up in a nice neat package that traumatized the citizens. Belief was a funny thing like that, contagious. The Blue Net was a little disheartened by this mass exodus, but it only made her more determined to fix this situation. The monks really didn't like me right now if it wasn't obvious, but since they swore oaths of non-violence their hands were metaphorically tied. You know, you could just tell them to fuck off, right? I said when Maya came to complain about the monks' complaints against me. You could stop antagonizing them at least and leave the archives so that others could have a turn. She said, and I scoffed. You act like I'm stopping them or something. They are as free to enter this place as they ever have been, they are just too big of a pussy to do so. I said disdainfully. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 573,578. Integrated Traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3 Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4 Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade. Stored Traits, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance. Chapter 28, Temporary Goodbye. Maya rolled her eyes at that but didn't argue since I was right. Besides that one monk I shot the ear off of, I hadn't harmed a hair on any of their heads. Hell, I hadn't even threatened them and they still act as if I'm some bear holed up in a pantry. It was a bit annoying to be honest, as they keep complaining about it when in fact we all know they were just too cowardly to actually come near me. How long are you planning to stay, by the way? Maya asked, changing the subject. My answer is still the same as the last 3 times you've asked, Maya, about a month. I'll spend about another month collecting traits from the wildlife here on Athenas before spending the last 2 months hunting Ratch and the beasties taken from Hydron. I said for the 4th time in the last 2 weeks. Can you just, I don't know, extend your time here or something? I like having you around. She asked with large pleading eyes. Oh, is that right? I assume that has nothing to do with the food you've been eating at all. I said, and she looked away with a sheepish smile at being called out like that. Okay, so maybe that's a part of it, but I'm not lying. It's nice to have someone else like me around, someone who understands what it's like. It also helps that you're hot. She admitted shyly. And 13, as I keep reminding you. Seriously, I get that I look like an adult, but stop looking at me like I'm a piece of meat. At least for another few years anyways. I said, and she blushed. I had made it clear as day that while I too found her sexy as shit, I refused to entertain any thoughts of acting on that idea until I was at least 16, which was biologically speaking a perfectly acceptable point to become sexually active. No one would bat an eye about it either, as few ever lived past 40 in the Borderlands, so hooking up early was even considered the norm. As someone from modern-day Earth, that felt foreign, but I was adaptable, pun intended, if nothing else. 16 was the lowest I was willing to accept, however, which means another year for Maya, who was 15, and another 2 and change for myself. I suppose I should point out that Maya had no intention of leaving Athenas until it was stable again, which would take a few years at least. The mass exodus of people really fucked the planet in terms of economy and government. Those left were watching to see if Maya went full tyrant or was good to her word and really had no intention of ruling any of them. I helped her a little since I was decently educated at this point and told her some of the ways I could think of to fix the issues, but the truth was that unless a corporation bought the planet, it was going to take some time to smooth things out. You may have noticed that nowhere in my said schedule did I mention grabbing her traits, and that was mostly because over the last 2 weeks I had already grabbed 3 that I wanted: Quick Thinking Rare Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade, and Energy Reservoir Epic Grade. I had only integrated energy projection so far, which caused the range of my powers to extend in every direction to a total of 25 feet. This was just an extra 10 from the 15 that the single stack of it gave me, but was still very useful. I hadn't integrated Energy Reservoir or Quick Thinking yet, simply because I wasn't entirely sure if it was a good idea. Energy Reservoir, for example, created a sort of energy storage capacity within the body of a certain amount of energy. For anyone else that would be great, but I had this instinct that if I personally added it to myself, I'd cripple the potential of my powers. It wasn't hard to figure out how either after going over the way I understood my powers. See, right now I could in theory hold an infinite amount of life force, my energy of choice. If I took this trait, however, that infinity would suddenly have a limit, and a small one at that. I decided to give the trait the shelved treatment for now to deal with it later. Quick thinking followed a similar reasoning in that I simply hadn't gotten around to it yet, not the it's bad for me part. My days here at the archives were fairly peaceful, and since I already had a game plan, I wasn't in a rush to leave. Anyone who says that not having a plan was a good way to live was lying through their ass and should be shot for giving bad advice. A good way to live would be to have a plan and then prepare yourself for it not working out. Then you feel like you have some control over things even if shit goes flying fuck sideways. Hell, plans don't even need to be complicated. Wake up and go outside was a plan despite its simplicity. In my case, I lived by a series of small adaptable plans that let me live however I wanted without worrying about it. Thanks to this, the next 2 weeks went by smoothly and I finished the books I had picked out from the archive. I of course made copies of the information within them on my Echo, but I was officially done with the archive. Time to hit the road, hey? Maya asked as she saw me step out of the archive for the first time since I got there a month ago. Yep, gonna grab any useful or interesting traits on this planet before heading back to Eden 6 for those tasty beasties the old man's got waiting for me. I said with a casual grin. Guess this is goodbye then. She said with a sad look. Only for now, I'm sure you'll bump into me eventually after you finally leave this place. I said with a chuckle. Not wanting to drag this out any longer than necessary, I turned and set off in a jog away from the monastery and towards the wild area nearby. The day was pleasant with clouds floating lazily overhead and a constant but gentle breeze that caused the bamboo, trees and other plants to rustle and wave. I could jog for hours if I paced myself so as my boots crunched on the grass and dirt as I went. I took in my surroundings leisurely. There wasn't much in terms of wildlife this close to the monastery, but the place was vibrant with green and blue plant life all over the place. The air smelled of the stuff and a strong earthiness that was pretty bland. The area not inhabited by people nearest the monastery was a small forest of bamboo and those odd blue-leafed bonsai-looking trees. Leaf for Life Force, 370. Traits, Dexterous Hands Common Grade 500 units, Sharp Sight Common Grade 500 units, Compact Form Common Grade 500 units, Environmental Camouflage, Silver Bark Tree, Rare Grade 5000 units. In the blue leaf trees lived small lemur-like creatures that were clearly quite used to people, as they not only didn't shy away from me but were more than happy to climb up my body and even play or groom themselves on me. They were about a foot long and had blue fur that matched the trees they lived in, as well as tails that looked like the leaves of said tree but were made of fur and cartilage rather than leaf. I wasn't particularly interested in any of their traits, to be honest, as even the rare grade trait was clearly an adaptation to evade the few predators that lived on this planet by blending into the trees they lived on. I could see the things being quite popular pets though, as they were adorable, hyper-friendly, and enjoyed getting petted. Most of them went back to their tree once I started to walk away, but one of them seemed perfectly content to nap on my shoulder, which ended up forcing me to take it off and put it on the tree. The next creature I encountered was not much better in terms of traits and was just as friendly as the leafers. It was a small feline about the size of a normal house cat, but was clearly more of a forager/scavenger, as its body was lean and it had a pouch of skin on its stomach used for storing food for later. Physically speaking, the creature was roughly built like a raccoon but less bulky and with clear feline features. Its fur also had a green color to it that let it blend into the grass and bamboo with ease. I hadn't seen the predator of this area, but judging from these details in both the species I had encountered so far, I was willing to bet it was either an avian of some sort or relied heavily on its vision. Anyways, this feline creature called a grammet had no hesitation at all, walking up to me and shaking its paws at me as if to beg for scraps, much the same way a raccoon would ask for something. Once it became clear I didn't have any food to give it though, the creature lost interest and wandered off. Morak. Life Force, 1299. Traits, Ambush Muscles Common Grade 500 units, Sharp Vision Common Grade 500 units, Active Camouflage Epic Grade 20,000 units, Powerful Jaws Common Grade 500 units. This fucker got me good after I had let down my guard because of those two friendly species. See, I was walking through the woods right, and all of a sudden one of these bitches springs out of bloody thin air and latches onto my upper arm and bit down hard with its shark-like teeth before thrashing. My shield stopped any damage, but I was not in a good mood and blew its fucking head off with a satisfying red mist explosion. It had a trait I very much wanted, however, so I immediately planned a little population control to get some copies to stack. Active camouflage was more or less the shit that chameleons could do, but in this case turned up to 10 as it blended almost to the point of perfect invisibility. I obviously grabbed the trait and life force without a second thought. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 508,578. Integrated traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3 Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4 Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade. Stored Traits, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance, Quick Thinking, Energy Reservoir, Active Camouflage. Chapter 29, Price Match. Nice as I believed the trait would be, the price stung a little if I'm being honest. 20k for a trait was not cheap and likely never would be. That didn't even take into consideration that traits might get more expensive in the future as I got stronger. Right now my body was sorta like a blank slate with plenty of room for improvement and upgrade. But eventually it would get covered in traits, and the price it would cost me to add new traits would as a result increase. Higher graded traits cost more because they impacted more and took up more room in my body. It should be remembered that the price I pay to get traits is determined by how much life force my body needed to add them, and the spent life force is used to sort of preload this process into the trait rather than truly disappearing. Knowing this, I had been making sure not to take too many stacks of any particular trait lest I made the prices start growing out of control. Some traits were worth grabbing as many stacks as possible in, like energy projection, but even then it wasn't exactly a common trait, and so I only had the 2 copies integrated. Active Camouflage wasn't one of these kinds of traits, as I estimated that after the 3rd copy I'd be basically invisible whenever I flipped it on so long as I was naked. Yes, slight downside there, as the trait being a part of my body didn't extend to my clothes, or rather would need some special usage to do so. My powers were the tits and let me mix and match traits like fucking Legos so I could get some traits to act differently than normal with the right combinations. In this case, applying active camouflage to energy projection should in theory allow me to create a small area around myself that was invisible as well, probably. Bioengineering stealth aside, I left the now ash corpse behind and continued walking through the forest. As it turned out, Morak were territorial as shit, so I hadn't found another even hours later. I had found some new creatures during this time, but they were all grog shit, useless for traits. I either already had the traits being offered or they came with big downsides. For example, there was this one trait called Suicide, yeah seriously, that let the creature off itself if it wanted to. I understand the idea behind why something would have such a trait, as sometimes death is preferable to suffering, but to have a built-in night-night switch was off-putting as hell. Thankfully the odd mouse creature didn't cyanide pill itself when I caught it, since it hadn't been hurt, but it was still fucking crazy to find. I should also make it clear that by the end of the day I was miles away from the monastery. I set up my house and ate a nice dinner before grabbing an hour of training in the sim room and feeding my monster egg some life force. For my next trick I'm going to disappear, I thought with a chuckle as I stripped and nudged my active camouflage trait to integrate. I immediately felt a burning sensation like a billion fire ants going to town on me all over my body. I couldn't be blamed for scratching at my skin at that point, as I developed a whole new set of nerves to control my new color-changing skin. The discomfort like usual didn't last long, but the phantom itch was real, as I had this psychological urge to scratch an itch that I was certain didn't actually exist. As for functionality, this new trait wasn't quite what I had expected, as while it could indeed let me change color and even alter the color of a small area around me for a short period with energy projection, it worked based on my sight. Now I had some damn good vision thanks to my traits, but not even I could see behind me. In other words, this trait was not as great as I thought it would be. Still useful, but like situationally useful rather than invisibility that was OP as fuck. Everyone seems to fail to realize that true invisibility meant that if used correctly you were untouchable. People forget just how much we rely on our sense of vision until it's taken from us, so when confronted by something that bypasses that sense entirely, well, I hear hell's nice this time of year. Now I'm not saying this is an absolute case, as instincts and the other senses can play a part in surviving against such an attack, but not many have those at the level that becomes possible in. Anyway, I was disappointed in the trait, and after sending my clothes through the cleaner went to sleep in a bad mood. I was feeling better when I woke up and got dressed before heading back outside my house and putting the place away. I ended up walking another 3 hours before I came across a new biome that held new possible traits. In this case it was a whole ass mountain complete with rocks, and you guessed it, more rocks. There was a bunch of moss and some shrubbery as well, but that was more or less it as far as plant life went. I used my hands as well as my feet to climb up the steep sides of the mountain and was rewarded for my effort. Athenian Rock Lizard. Life Force, 843. Traits, Keen Nose Common Grade 500 units, efficient lungs rare grade 5000 units, frail form trash grade 50 units, hard skin common grade 500 units. Ignoring the lazy naming sense, the small stone-colored reptile with 6 legs had a really good trait that I was glad to grab since it solved a problem I'd have much later. Efficient lungs basically allowed this high-altitude reptile to absorb far more oxygen with each breath it took. That didn't sound all that impressive at first glance, but what I had taken into account was that my body would likely require more and more resources the stronger it got, and that included oxygen. Being able to get more of it with each breath I took was a damn good thing to have as a result. Plus it meant that I could hold my breath for way longer so long as I remained still, since I'd have much more oxygen than normal. I grabbed that trait and moved on, leaving the lizard confused but still alive since there was no reason to kill it. As I got higher and higher up the mountain it got colder and colder, but to my surprise I discovered a cave with snow packed into the entrance over time into a thin layer of ice. I accidentally discovered it when I reached for a jutting piece of rock and it slipped out and smashed the snow-covered sheet of ice. The inside of the cave was much warmer than the outside, but what really interested me was the preserved corpse at the back. It was a strange humanoid thing with 2 arms and 2 legs, but the proportions were all wrong. The limbs were long and thin and the body was narrow and slender. The entire thing also had on a metallic armor on that had been clearly cleaved through with some form of claw on the center of the chest piece. The corpse was little more than a mummy that had long since lost all life force and traits and may even have turned to dust already if not for the perfect conditions the cave provide for it. "Oh, now there's something I hadn't expected to find," I said with a wide grin splitting my face as I laid my eyes on the object resting quietly in the 4-fingered hand of the corpse, a vault key. Name: Athena's vault key. Description: a strange iridian object with the power to open the vault on Athena's. The key itself was made of the same impossibly tough material as the one sitting in my house right now, but the shape was very different. This key looked almost like a staff in design, as it was a pole comprised of 3 pieces and covered in curving marks and symbols regularly favored by Iridians. I walked over to the corpse and examined it before taking the key from its long dead hands. "No blood trail, and the darkened stone beneath this corpse is too small. You teleported to this place, didn't you?" I muttered, confused as I could see no tech on this thing at all, much less a teleporter device. After taking the key with a crack that came from the broken bones holding it, I didn't hesitate to defile the corpse by stripping the metal armor off of it so I could study it. I remember that annoying time on Bale 3 where I took apart one of those seraphs only to discover that their internal mechanisms defied all logic. It wouldn't be a stretch to think that this corpse that I had suspicions of being an Iridian could have similar tech in it. Don't think I wanted to spare the corpse either, as if it really was an Iridian, even if it was mummified, it was worth a fortune. The problem, however, was that anyone with a brain would notice that the corpse had something on it that had been removed and naturally assume I, as the finder and seller, took whatever it was, which was totally fucking true in this case. "Tough luck, I guess. Looks like you get to rest here until someone else finds you, if ever," I said to the corpse before heading back out the cave. I scaled the mountain to its peak and after taking a shit on it went down the opposite side. I came across 3 more rock lizards on the way day, as well as a rock snake that lacked any traits I really wanted. I grabbed all 3 copies of efficient lungs, which gave me 4 total, with 2 of those going to me and the other 2 to my monster egg. Honestly speaking, Athena's wasn't that great in terms of traits for me to grab. It was too peaceful and orderly for that. The ecosystem here hadn't had the need to create viciously powerful life forms or unusual adaptations, and so most of what I could find would be pretty common. I don't mean grade-wise, but in terms of actual rarity in the natural world. Blending with the surroundings and having adaptations for one's environment are to be expected. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 503,578. Integrated Traits: Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade. Stored Traits: Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance, Quick Thinking, Energy Reservoir, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X4. Chapter 30, Big Bug. If anything though, I was looking forward to opening that vault now that I had roughly gauged Athena's trait pool. I'm not sure if the vault monsters sealed in the vaults were originally from the planets they were sealed away on, but if that was the case, I was curious what sort of monster could have been born on this planet. Obviously it would be some sort of mutant, but most mutations were hardly noticeable in a member of a species without careful observation. Yet despite this, a creature had managed to get classified as a threat by even a race like the Iridians, so clearly whatever made this thing like this was no small thing. Now to figure out how to open the vault without sending alarms off to every person within the 6 galaxies like a dumbass. I pondered with a frown. Finding the vault was easy since it was public knowledge where it was located. No, the issue was that it was under heavy automated security protocols to keep people from actually messing with it. Those same security measures had long been hacked by the various interested parties that wished to study the vault. This meant if I just walked into that place brazenly, I'd tip off a whole hell of a lot of people that I not only went to the vault but was also responsible for opening it. Now I don't mind a bit of adversity, but not even I'm confident in surviving the onslaught of every jackass with a gun in the 6 galaxies gunning for my fine self without stop. Just the rumors of a vault to be opened on Pandora is enough for people to throw away their lives by the droves. Not to even get started talking on the repercussions that actually opening a vault would cause. For starters, I'd immediately get a massive fucking bounty placed on my head regardless of the Jacob's interference. There was no way to avoid it when the contents of a vault could be valuable enough to send any of the major corporations skyrocketing ahead of the competition. In the face of such juicy potential profits, few would stop at anything to get their hands on them. Sure, they'd all try to buy the vault key and the vault's contents off me first. But when that inevitably failed, since I definitely wouldn't hand over my prize so easily, it was bounty o'clock. Anyways, the next big issue with opening the vault that came was related the previous, but not exactly at the same time. I am of course referring to the absolute shitstorm that the Jacobs will get hit with, since there was no hiding my ties to them. This was going to turn into one of those guilty by association type deals for them, as everyone will start pressuring the Jacobs to hand over whatever I got from the vault. Thankfully that particular old tree had a thorny bark and believed in shotgun diplomacy. Any pressure put on Jacobs would only result in the old man in charge returning it in kind. Ugh, how annoying. I thought as I sat leaned against a tree at the bottom of the mountain planning my next move. I don't like complicated plans, never have. Too many details hinged on the previous step following through leaves far too much room for something unexpected to happen that fucks the whole thing up from that point forward. I like generalized plans with plenty of room for improvisation. You know, now that I think about it, couldn't I just shoot out the power to cut the signals? I thought, sitting up as the idea hit me. I wasted no time at all opening my house up and heading to the teleporter room. Once there, I grabbed the amber orb that controlled the whole thing and set it to take me back to the monastery. While the vault wasn't there, it was nearby that area. Specifically, it was in a cave system a couple miles to the side of the place. Apparently the Iridians like putting vaults in places like caves, since this was the third one I knew of in that sort of place. The one I had no connection to was the one that Atlas opened a ways back. Once I arrived at the monastery, I put away my house and didn't head for the entrance to the caves, but rather the tower above it with a bunch of wires and radio dishes on it. Bang! 4 shots rang out as I shot all 4 of the center points of the signal tower that was corroded and clearly ill-maintained. This made the whole structure groan as the strain of its own weight pressed down on it. Now for the finishing touch, a little blast aim for flare. I thought with a grin as I took out some sticks of the dangerous stuff and lit the fuses before calmly tossing them at each of the 4 legs of the tower. I jogged away a good distance before watching the show. Kaboom! Crash! The explosion roared out violently and the tower immediately fell as the force blew out its already weakened foundation. That'll fuck up any signals going out from me, busting up the power on the security forces. Now for the actually dangerous part. I thought with a serious expression as I headed for the entrance to the caves that held the vault. I sprinted away from this area and towards the cave entrance, as there was no doubt people on the way here to investigate what the shit just happened. It only took me about 10 minutes to see the entrance covered in vines and metal gates that looked barely functional. To the side of the rock area was a generator that had a obvious cable running from it to the gates. Bang! I fired a shot right into the generator that let off a burst of electrical energy but broke down moments later. The rocks crunched under my feet as I dashed into the gaping maw of the cave after the now unpowered gates fell open. It was dark, but I expected as much given the fact I had just taken out the power that would have been lighting the place up. Toggling my thermal sense on, I could vaguely make out my surroundings in the dark based on the shape and colors I saw. Bang! X3. Thanks to this, I fired off 3 shots to take out the still hot and active robotic sentries. I carefully made my way deeper in the cave, relying on my thermal sense to keep me from running into a wall. Any robots or sentries turrets I came across got deep-sixed, and eventually I got past the guarded part and to the actual Iridian ruins that thankfully glowed orange so I could see again. In standard Iridian fashion there was many exposed stone structures and weird humanoid shadows that had glowing blue energy flowing through them with no discernible source. I saw signs of fights long past here as I walked that showed me why I hadn't found any seraphs, they were all killed. I shook my head in regret seeing this, what a waste, could have at least used them as free guards. I muttered as I walked through this deathly silent place. I thought it rather funny how there was signs pointing the way straight to the vault. Like, man, if you don't want anyone to come down here, why make signs for it? Deciding to chalk it up to the weirdness that I've come to recognize as common in this reality, I moved on. About 2 hours of walking at a downward angle later and the cave widened out into a huge cavernous chamber with massive statues holding spears and a familiar-looking broken stone arch in the distance that had a stone pedestal in front of it. "Grab your popcorn, ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime," I said with an eager grin as I dashed over to the pedestal. Removing the pole-like key from my inventory, I slotted it into the hole on the top of the pedestal and made some distance as the thing sank below the ground. The pieces of the broken archway began to rise and slot themselves into place through some mysterious force until a complete archway was formed. Whoosh! The familiar black-purple portal manifested into existence and a large red carapaced limb extended out of it. Behind that leg came another and another, then a clicking insectoid head and body. "Tithonus, hungry, thinks you smell like bacon. Now there's an introduction I can get behind. Bring it, bitch!" I yelled with a wide grin as I drew my gun. Tithonus was a 6-legged bug with the body of a beetle, tail of a scorpion and the size of a semi-truck. The whole body was deep red in color and had 8 beady black eyes staring at me from its head. Scree! The thing made this ungodly noise before spitting a stream of dark green liquid at me that sizzled the moment it hit the ground after I dodged to the sides. Acid, hey! That can be a slight pain in the ass if it leaves enough pools behind. I thought, seeing this. I raised my gun and squeezed the trigger 3 times as fast as I could while aiming for those eyes. Tink! 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 I frowned a little when I saw the big bug block my shots with its tail without slowing down at all on its charge towards me. Not as stupid as that big ape, it seems. Good. It's no fun if it's one-sided. I thought excitedly as I sprinted away with the bug hot on my trail. I dipped behind a statue and the ground shook as the bug charged right into the stone thing full speed. Scree! The bug sounded pissed. I took advantage of its disorientation from the impact to circle around the blast the bug in between the joints of its tail to cripple it. I failed to totally cripple that tail, but I certainly caused serious damage as the bug leapt backwards like a reverse grasshopper. It hissed in pain as well as dripped green blood from its wounds. The tail also lay limply against its back to be protected from further damage as the bug eyed me with an intense desire to kill. I reloaded my gun with a casual shake and grinned madly. "I know that's not the best you got, so come on, bitch, show me what put you in this vault," I taunted, and the bug was more than happy to oblige me. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 503,578. Integrated Traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade. Stored Traits, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance, Quick Thinking, Energy Reservoir, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X4. Chapter 31, Big Bug, 2. Immediately flames burst in existence along the carapace of the big fucking bug. I fucking knew it. I yelled with a wide grin seeing this. For context, I had thought it odd that the bug had such a bright red coloration and yet not a hint of fire, and if anything seemed more like a physical fighter than anything else, what with the charging and scorpion stinger and all. For some weird reason, universe rules I guess, the creatures that got elemental traits took on a different coloration related to their element. Red was typically fire related, hence my confusion. Ah, I see. I had to warm you up first before you started to use those flames, right? I said, more a statement than a question. Scree! The bug screamed angrily and I was forced to dive to the side as it launched itself at me far faster than before. Naturally, I wasn't planning to let the living pyre get anywhere near me, as fire resistant as I may be, I was not fireproof. Bang! X3! I fired 3 shots at the bug and it barely even reacted when they cracked its hard carapace where the bullets struck. Its speed and defense raised from flaming up. I call hacks. I thought, annoyed as I was forced to evade yet again. Clearly the bug wasn't done showing off as the flames suddenly grew in intensity, turning blue as the heat started to bake the floor and ceiling and the air became stifling. It didn't stop there but jumped up and slammed down 3 times, sending a ring of blue flames expanding in every direction with each impact. Fuck! I cursed as I contracted my leg muscles and leapt high up to avoid the flames, but leaving me vulnerable as well. The bug seemed to almost teleport as it went from the ground perfectly still to mere feet away from me midair with clawed legs stretched out, but definitely not asking for a hug. Shit! Blue flames made it even faster. I thought in horror as I realized that this bug was considered highly dangerous by the Iridians for a very different but equally valid reason than the Colossus. Unable to dodge since I was mid-air, my mind raced with possible escapes and I found only one, but it sucked balls. I had to let it hit me. I felt the heat start to strain my shield and with gritted teeth lashed out with my gun-held hand straight into the waiting claws. The shield broke immediately and my right sleeve burnt away shortly afterwards as the claws ripped into my flesh, but the impact thankfully pushed me away before I suffered catastrophic damage in it. I hit the ground hard and rolled, but got to my feet immediately while ignoring the vicious burns and weeping gouges in my arm. All my senses heightened as adrenaline flooded through me and a massive predatory smile crossed my face, not unlike the snarl of a tiger or jaguar. This was my element. The dance at the tip of a blade that made me feel more alive than ever, the chilling wisps of death's breath on the back of my neck was intoxicating. I entirely failed to notice my tattoos glowing in response to my emotional state, nor that my eyes were practically blazing green as I locked my entire focus on the bug. There was no missed beat as the instant the bug landed, its legs tore apart the ground as it turned its forwards momentum into sideways momentum. It was slower now that my senses were firing at full fucking capacity, but still moved like a slightly blurred image. I could see how it got so motherfucking fast too, as the flames were shooting behind it much like a thruster pushing it forward. I pushed off to the side mere moments before it would have barreled into me and noted immediately that all that speed came at a cost: control. It couldn't turn without serious effort, and that gave me some ideas. I located the nearest wall and began to sprint towards it while keeping an eye on the bug that was working to cancel its forward movement. I reached the wall just in time as the bug was positioning itself to charge me once again, and I crouched, priming my legs for a full force vertical jump. The bug blurred towards me, but I remained perfectly still. It drew near, but still I refused to move. It was within 2 meters of me when I launched myself up and over it as it slammed headfirst into the wall at full speed. Boom! The room shook from the impact and the bug half buried itself in the stone, leaving it stunned and, more importantly, vulnerable. I emptied my gun into the joint in the center of its back as I went up and once more on the way down for a total of 14 shots. I had no intention of landing on the still flaming bug though, and kicked off the wall to roll behind it instead. The strain made my arm bleed again by pulling at the scabs my regeneration had already created to stop the bleeding previously. The bug did not like my 14 gifts and screeched in agony and rage as it tore itself out of the wall, even at the cost of worsening the wounds. Screech! With a loud screech, it became clear that I had entered the final stage mode of this boss battle as the flame grew brighter and brighter into it, clearly past a threshold, and wisps of white began to appear in it. Oh shit, that's a suicidal level of heat! I thought with horror as I watched the carapace of the creature start to change color, which indicated that it had started to get cooked by its own power, if only slowly. Like most insects, it became clear that now that I presented a viable threat to its life and not just food that fought back, it was going all out to survive. You might ask how that was when it was harming itself, but the answer was pretty simple: between death and injury, which is the better choice? While this heat was enough to hurt it, if it killed me and thus survived, why would that matter? I barely managed to dodge as my instincts screamed at me, and the bug's after image at its previous location vanished as a line of flame scorched the ground it passed over that shot right past where I was just standing. Let me tell you, that put my balls in my throat in instinctual terror, as every instinct I had was screaming a single word at me: death. Looks like I have to use that finally. I thought reluctantly as I activated that aspect of my powers I had been avoiding since I got them: burn. The instant my life force store ignited, I stiffened as my body ballooned in size and all my senses reached ridiculous levels, yet didn't overwhelm my mind that was fucking cranked up to 500. My wounds immediately bulged and healed in an instant as if they were never there, and red energy coated my entire frame as if it were fire. The bug was clearly unaware of just how fucked it was at this point and went charging at me at its ridiculous speed, only for me to kick it in the face. Its body was forced to a halt with a sickening crunch, as its head and the bones and flesh of my leg shattered. Moments later the leg regenerated, bones and all, but the bug's head certainly didn't. The flames went out immediately on it and I hurriedly cut off the burn, causing a crippling sense of loss as that godly feeling I just had slips through my fingers as my body deflates back to its original size and my senses dull. I knew that the boost would be significant, but what the absolute fuck? It was like all of my traits had been pushed to 20. Is that what I will be like all the time if I go far enough? I ponder, seriously taken off guard by what I just experienced. Life force, 377,110. I hiss in shock when I observe my stores of life force, as I had lost 126,468 units of life force in that short span of maybe 2 or 3 seconds. I cursed like a particularly large vocabularied sailor at the loss, and doubly so when I realized I was no doubt going to lose even more life force by taking the traits of the bug. I sighed before opening my house and dragging the corpse inside while ignoring its traits, since I was sort of on a deadline before people start showing up to come at the vault. Leaving my house, I hurry into the now functional vault portal, and after a moment of disorientation notice it was a bit different than the last one I went into. Not much, as it was just a big open pocket dimension with no real walls and lots of statues of Iridian design, and of course the 4 chests in the far back of it. The real difference was that in the center, where there was a single statue holding my house on bail, there were 3 statues in this vault holding the prize. Said prize was interesting, as it appeared to be a person-sized black tech cube with purple energy lines swirling along its entire length. Iridian Data Module. Level, Relic. Description: knowledge is its own reward, doubly so when it's about guns. Oh fuck, does that mean what I think it does? I exclaim in shock and more than a little greed. Unless the description was lying, this cube here was a motherfucking treasure trove, as it contained the methods the missing alien race used to craft their weapons. This was huge, as so long as I could crack and translate the information into something I could understand, I could make my own corporation based on the tech. That might sound rather uninspired, but keep in mind that corporations not only held monetary power but also military and political power as well. Before I could get caught up in my power fantasies though, I reached out to grab the cube, only to freeze the moment my hand touched it. The glowing purple energy of the cube surged into my arm and my eyes rolled back as knowledge was directly imprinted into my brain from the cube. This lasted all of 2 minutes before it finished, and I slumped to the ground and my mind refocused itself. Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade. Iridian Data Module. Level, Relic. Description: an empty library waiting to be filled. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 377,110. Integrated Traits: Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade, Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade. Stored Traits: Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance, Quick Thinking, Energy Reservoir, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X4. Chapter 32, Robotic Butler. Fuck. Shit. I wanted to put that on a god's damn terminal, not get it downloaded to my fucking head. I cursed angrily in my head at what just happened. While my reaction might seem odd, it needed to be understood that if the information had been put into a terminal, I could have had an AI or program decrypt it bit by bit until I had the full recipes set in a way I just need to manufacture them. Now, however, I had all this information about Iridian engineering in my head, but it was all in Iridian. While the alien fuckers weren't so cruel as to stuff my head with information I couldn't use, I had basically had my idea of starting a corporation strangled in the cradle with this. Sure, I could personally manufacture each and every weapon if I wanted to, but there was little hope of me mass-producing anything anytime soon. At least the alien library is nice, I guess. I think with a frustrated sigh. Remembering that I was sorta on a time frame here, I dashed over to the chests and popped them open before stuffing the contents into my inventory, though I did find a legendary weapon that I didn't pause to examine at all before it got stuffed into my inventory. Once I was certain I emptied out the vault, I ran to the portal and out of the thing. Hurry, I think I can hear something ahead. A voice yelled in the distance when I got in the chamber I fought the bug in. I snatched up the vault key, closing the vault before tossing my house out and running through the portal the moment it appeared. I hit the stealth button before dashing to the teleporter room and got the fuck off this planet and back to Eden 6 before I got found out. Hoodoo shit, that was close. I mutter with a little sweat on my forehead due to the stress. I waited a few moments before teleporting my house back to Athena's, specifically the archives of the monastery. I dipped my head out the portal of my house and upon spotting no one around put away my house and waited for what I knew was going to inevitably happen. A good 30 minutes of waiting later and my favorite brunette walked into the archives cautiously. She looked around with narrow eyes before spotting me leaning against a wall with a smirk. You look like shit. She commented immediately. I took an enthusiastic walk through the woods. I said casually. And into a volcano. She teased. A very enthusiastic walk. I said with a grin. So you really went and opened the vault and didn't invite me? She asked with mock offense. I chuckled. Trust me, you really wouldn't have liked to come to this vault, the damn bug almost fucking killed my ass. I complained. Bug? She asked curiously. Yeah, the vault monster was this giant red beetle thing with a scorpion tail that moved fast as hell and hit like a truck. Oh, and it was on fire. I explained honestly. Sounds dangerous. She said, and I chuckled. Yeah, that was kinda the whole reason it was in there to begin with. There's this theory that vault monsters are just Iridian weapons, but I know for certain that is at least for the most part wrong. They are for the most part just creatures that upset the natural order in an extremely dangerous way, anomalies really. I said with a sigh. Was it worth it at least? She asked curiously and with a bit of greed. Well, I got a whole library's worth of knowledge on Iridian engineering and the library itself, so kinda. I said, making a face. That sounds awesome, so why the face? She asked confused. Stupid aliens set the information to be downloaded straight into the mind of whoever got it. And I had this whole plan of making my own corporation and everything. I complained. To summarize, you can make Iridian stuff and can't share the info. She asked with a growing smile, and I nodded annoyed. You're rich. She exclaimed excitedly, confusing me a little until I understood what she meant. In my self-pity I had sorta forgotten that all Iridian tech was worth more than gold, and the fact I could just crank the stuff out at all meant I was a walking treasure chest. Hey? I guess I am rich, aren't I? I muttered, a little disoriented by the understanding. Once excitement died down over my newfound hypothetic fortune, Maya proceeded to explain how things went while I opened the vault from the outside. Apparently at first it was just someone getting sent out to investigate the signal and power generators, but once it was clear that someone was going to the vault, it was all hands on deck. Ships started to get scrambled to Athenas to try and take the now open vault for each different party who had been monitoring it for opening. According to Maya, the only reason I hadn't gotten caught was because the different corporate troops that were sent to secure the vault fought in a big skirmish which held them off long enough for me to finish my fight and loot the place, though it had been a close call. The funny part was that despite clearly understanding that the vault was opened, the troops that made it into chamber where I fought, Atlas apparently, thought that I was stealthed and still in the chamber and thus combing it even now. Clearly they hadn't realized that I had teleported out, or even that I could teleport out of the chamber. Honestly, I almost felt a bit bad for them, as they were destined to fail at finding anything and had come all this way for nothing. So you want to see the big bug before I turn it to ash? I asked with a grin after she was done explaining the situation to me. Yes. She said eagerly. I opened my house up again and we went in, where she saw the corpse in the middle of my floor and shuddered. Ugh, it really is a big bug and it stinks too. She said, holding her nose. I had to agree, as there was a rotten scent coming off the corpse of the bug despite the short period it had been dead that may have been chemical in nature. Pointing my right hand at the corpse, I activated my powers and got a look at the bug's traits. Tithanas. Life Force, 57,491. Traits: Gigantism Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Supreme Exoskeleton Rare Grade 5000 units, Multilimbed Common Grade 500 units, Poor Vision Trash Grade 50 units, Fire Resistance Epic Grade 20,000 units, Elemental Body, Fire, Legendary Grade 100,000 units, Superior Vitality Epic Grade 20,000 units. Oh damn son, that's some good shit right there. I exclaim in pleasant surprise. Before Maya could ask what I meant, I listed out the traits it had as well as the amount of life force it had. Nice. Those last three in particular sound like the tits. She said with a wide smile. I agreed and without hesitation spent the 140,000 units to get them, but got back 57,491 from the corpse, so two of them basically cost me nothing. Out of them, Elemental Body, Fire, was the most impressive because it was what the bug used to flame up as well as harden up and speed up while it was on fire. It was a trait that did exactly that too, so it was quite simple in use but powerful without any doubt despite this simplicity. The only real catch was that you could only go as hot as your body was able to handle, because even if you were projecting it away from you, you still got the heat of it all the same. This explained the ungodfully powerful fucking resistance trait the bug had as well. It was there to keep the bug from killing itself by flaming up at any point. The fact that you needed an extra trait for safety reason told me that if I ever came across another elemental trait like this I shouldn't take it without the corresponding resistance trait. The corpse fell into a pile of grey ash once I took the life force and traits from it, which was a bit annoying but not a huge problem. What's that in the ash? Maya asked, surprised, and looking carefully I saw that there was indeed something within the pile. Walking over I brushed away the ash to reveal a round object that made me laugh. It was an Iridian power core. I guess we know what it ate before it was sealed in the vault. I joked and we both laughed. What even is that? She asked curiously and I explained, so the tech the Iridians use to power their stuff? Is it any good still? She asked doubtfully and I looked it over carefully. It's dormant but the casing is intact and from what I can tell the rest of the components are as well. If I were to make a recharging station I should be able to use it. I said honestly, using my new knowledge. I thought Iridian tech had infinite energy though. She asked surprised. Infinite energy is a myth, Iridian tech is just really efficient, so until now we mistook the amount of energy to be infinite. Still, even with that being the case, a single core like this could power a large ship for centuries no problem. I said seriously. What are you going to use it for? She asked curiously. Robot butler. I say seriously. What? She asked dumbfounded by my answer. I'm going to make a kick-ass robotic butler with lasers and shit, it's going to be awesome. I said excitedly. Why though? She asked horrified. Why the fuck not? I have a whole fuck ton of Iridian engineering knowledge crammed in my head and a power core that is typically made for Iridian seraphs, it's like fate itself wants me to make a badass robotic butler. I preach excitedly. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 377,110. Integrated traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3 Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4 Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Fire Resistance Uncommon Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade, Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade. Stored Traits, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance, Quick Thinking, Energy Reservoir, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X4, Fire Resistance Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Fire, Legendary Grade, Superior Vitality Epic Grade. Chapter 33, Broken Hopes. Counter-argument, Gun. She says and I pause to consider it. I mean, yeah, I guess I could turn it into a gun instead, but that's so lame when I could have a robot butler that can kill armies. I say with a frown. You can do that? She asked in shock. I rolled my eyes. Weren't you listening? I can make anything mechanical that the Iridians could so long as I have the materials. Honestly speaking, they were kinda hacks with how wide their tech reached in applications. The only reason their robot guardians hadn't been unstoppable was that the race seemed more focused on making them last rather than making them as powerful as possible. I said honestly. Can't you do both? She asked curiously. If you had the time and resources to spend on one super bot, sure. These seraphs though were meant to be easy to mass produce and long lasting. Besides, the Iridians were borderline pacifist from what I understand, and not the sort to make ridiculously powerful weapons without sealing them away for safety reasons afterwards. I said with a shrug. If you are using Iridian knowledge to make your robot, then what will make it different than theirs? She pointed out. Complexity. Seraphs are simple constructs. Well, most are anyways. Thanks to my new knowledge I can think of a few exceptions, but for the most part this holds true. Anyways, my robot will be almost complex enough to be considered false life. Wait. Fuck. I forgot about that. I went to explain my plan before realizing a huge issue and cursing loudly. What? She asked confused. All this knowledge I have will let me make the body of such a robot, but not the mind. The knowledge doesn't include the programming for A.Is. I said frustrated. Can't you just use a normal A.I? She asked confused about my frustration. Can an idiot drive a ship? Yes. Would you trust them to do so correctly though? Not if you valued your life. The same applies here. Sure, a normal AI could operate a robot like this, but it's like putting an idiot behind the wheel of a ship, a very bad idea. I sigh after my explanation. Looks like you get your gun idea after all. I mutter, a little annoyed. Well, look on the bright side, awesome gun. She said, trying to cheer me up. She failed. Admittedly, it wasn't her fault, as I was just a little drained from the vault monster fight and double disappointments from my ideas getting strangled in the cradle twice in a short span of time. I know I should just be happy with the big benefits that I had gotten, but what can I say except that I was a perfectionist? Once my disappointment went away and I could really think about my gains, I couldn't help but grin. Whether it was in terms of traits or loot, I really had gotten lucky as shit. Just the engineering knowledge alone made me potentially the most valuable person in the 6 galaxies due to the sheer potential there. Obviously, I'd need a whole hell of a lot of imagination or directions to utilize this knowledge fully, but the potential for a mass revolution of various fields through this knowledge was there. There was, however, one thing that sort of put a damper on this: responsibility. Look, my morals might be all but non-existent, but even I could understand that what I release into the universe I am responsible for. This means if someone uses my tech for some really fucked up shit, then it's kinda on me for enabling them in that way. Like, I'm not saying that if someone took my tech and twisted its purpose I am directly responsible for it, since obviously I hadn't made them do that. But to a degree I had to understand that once a piece of tech was released it may end up used like that. This led me to deeply thinking about what, if anything, I should release into the world. I found a few things that immediately got put in the keep to yourself till death and even after list. Weaponry, armor, energy, to name a few, were things that under no circumstances could I let the information on out into the world. Energy in particular was a big one, because after gaining this knowledge on the Iridian's usage of it I understood the truly devastating potential it had. You know, those world-destroying, sun-exploding things I thought about a while ago? Yeah, that kinda stuff was child's play to accomplish for the Iridians. Needless to say, I was going to be keeping that particular set of knowledge to myself. What I found astonishing as I dug through my new knowledge pool to familiarize myself with it fully was that some parts of this knowledge used the powers of sirens as a component. For example, there was a few parts that needed the touch of phase shift to finish up correctly. I didn't stay for long after talking with Maya, as the corporate troops were starting to spread out in search of the person who opened the vault. I wasn't worried about them bothering Maya or the monks much, as they wouldn't find anything even remotely Iridian that wasn't in the Siren vault at the far end of the monastery that no one could open. I said my goodbye to Maya and teleported my house for the last time until it was time to head to Pandora. I didn't leave my house after getting to Eden 6 though, as I wanted to integrate those traits that had been sitting inside me idly. Amphibious lungs, water resistance, quick thinking, efficient lungs rare grade X4, fire resistance epic grade, elemental body, fire, legendary grade, superior vitality epic grade were all waiting for my input. The first 2 and 2 stacks of efficient lungs I stopped procrastinating with and stuffed into the egg along with 3,000 units of life force. Greedy thing was costing me an arm and leg to sculpt as I wished, but I still felt it would be worth it in the end, as I doubt many people can claim to own a dragon. Anyways, with that done I made my way to my bathroom and stripped before sitting on the floor near the drain. Prepared for what came next, I nudged superior vitality, quick thinking, fire resistance and the last 2 stacks of efficient lungs. Immediately my body began to seize as my neurons rearranged themselves for faster thought. My body swelled larger as my vitality increased by 3/4, not my life force, mind you. While life force was tied to vitality, it wasn't the same thing, but rather a more potent vitality meant the life force you did have went further in how it affected you. Anyways, efficient lungs went to work transforming my lungs into oxygen gathering machines that near perfectly ripped all the elements out of each breath I took. The greatest change, however, came from fire resistance, as my skin began to slough off only to be replaced by darker bronze skin with a noticeable red tinge to it. This transformation only lasted a few moments as per normal, but I felt like shit afterwards, which was to be expected given the amount of traits I had integrated all at once. I also noticed that my original fire resistance trait had fused into the new one, but had pretty much no difference due to the sheer disparity between their grades. My fucking hair! I just grew that back, for fuck's sake! I complained as I noticed the changing of my skin had caused my regrown hair to get discarded, again. I cleaned up the mess from this round of integration before finally moving on to the main course, the legendary grade elemental body, fire. The integration of this trait went very differently than any that had come before. Rather than causing a change in my body that was purely biological, my tattoos that covered my entire right arm, leg, chest, and stopped under my eye expanded. They glowed a vibrant green as the odd swirling symbols on my chest started spawning even more on my belly, reaching over to the left side of my body before stopping. Unlike before, where the tattoos only covered my right side and the center of my chest, I now had tattoos across my abs as well, with only my left side being free of them. This transformation was also entirely painless, but I felt the trait's effects clearly. Unlike what the trait was supposed to do on a biological scale of engulfing my entire body in flames, I could instead choose what went up in flames, almost like a form of pyrokinesis. With an interested look I raised my right hand, and with but a small flex a red flame sparked into existence on my palm. As I had thought, I still felt the heat on my skin, but thanks to my resistance trait no harm was coming to my body from the flame, and in fact the skin of my palm even hardened slightly instead. With a bit of mental manipulation I could even control the direction the flame was projected out like the bug had, and with some strain even increase the temperature of the flame. Blue flames was my limit as any further, and even my ridiculous resistance began to falter and I felt some pain. Still, that was more than enough as far as I was concerned, as I doubted that I'd be trying to bathe in intense flames anytime soon. With my integration done I had worked up an appetite and certainly didn't need a bath, since I'd literally shed off any grime on me. I ordered a massive amount of salmon, poutine, cinnamon rolls, grape soda, and salad before digging in once I got it all. Once I was good and stuffed I got dressed again and finally left my house. My room in the Jacobs Manor was just how I left it, minus a bit of tidying up that Baldrin had clearly done while I was gone. Nothing major, mind you, just a bit of a floor polish and having my bed made up is all. To my surprise, however, there was an item that I certainly hadn't put in here present: a suit. It was a smooth formal thing made out of a brown silk and had green scales embroidered along its length using cleverly placed stitches. The undershirt paired with it was emerald green, and it even had a pair of brown leather shoes to match the outfit as well. There was a note pinned to the neatly folded fabric that I carefully removed before reading. Boy, if you are reading this, it meant you've come back to the manor and found the suit I left for you. I hope you like it, because I had to set aside my feelings on the matter and reach out to that buffoon Torg to get a guess at your sizes with some extra room in case you suddenly grow a bunch as well. You are a part of the Jacobs family, and that means you should damned well look like it. Sincerely, Montgomery Jacobs. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 374,110. Integrated Traits: Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Rare Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Superior Bones Rare Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade, Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance, Quick Thinking, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X2, Fire Resistance Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Fire, Legendary Grade. Stored Traits, Energy Reservoir. Chapter 34, Binge. I chuckled at the gruffness that practically oozed from each pen stroke, but the heart of the note was easy enough to see. This was more or less the old man's way of saying he considered me a part of the Jacobs family. I'm not talking about the corporation but the family itself. In other words, I had been more or less adopted. I wasn't surprised really, as I'd need to be fucking blind to miss the signs of this coming. I may have been a stranger when I first walked into this place, but both I and the old man had grown to see it as a place I can rest at, a home. As Clay had said, the old man was gruff and firm and will pick on you if you don't stand up for yourself, but it was all coming from a good place. He had a funny way of showing it, but he wanted the best from those close to him. With this in mind, I was proud to suit up in the provided attire. It was all slightly off-feeling in certain parts, but that was because of my traits making my body disproportionate. The pants were slightly tight while the shirt and coat were slightly loose, and the shoes fit just right. Honestly, I had to give the tailor credit, as even after my unexpected growth spurt on Athena's, the clothes still more or less fit me, which was quite impressive. Once suited up good and proper, I pulled the brass handle of the wooden door to my room and walked out. If I had to guess, I'd say it was about midday on Eden 6, so the manor was a bit warm, but otherwise the temperature was fairly cool. As I walked through the manor, my new shoes tapped on the wooden floors noticeably, but that didn't bother me. Soon I ran into Baldrin as he dusted a shelf in the hallway. "A young Master Alex. I am most pleased to see your safe return and no doubt fruitful venture to Athena's. Might I say you look quite regal in your new suit?" the butler said with a warm but small smile. "It's good to be back, and you look to be doing good as well," I said with my own smile. "Fit as a fiddle, sir," the man said, flexing a bit playfully. "Off to see the old man now, but we'll chat more later if you'd like." "Oh right, got you some tea leaves from the monks' sacred gardens while I was there, go nuts," I said, taking the packet of leaves from my inventory, and he nodded. "Most appreciated, sir, I'll be certain to savor each leaf," he said, happy with the gift as I turned to leave. Like usual, I found the old man in the study working on paperwork while sipping whiskey leisurely. He heard me walk in and looked up from his work to send a critical eye over me. "I'll need to get the tailor to adjust the pants, but you almost look like a proper Jacobs now," he said gruffly. I rolled my eyes at this. "Good to see you too, old-timer, got quite the fucking tale to tell you," I said with a grin. "That's what I fucking did too." I told him about the grief the monks gave me after arriving. I told him about Maya and the archive and my trip across the planet and discovery of the vault key. Finally I told him about me opening the vault and fighting the bug as well as my reward from the vault. Throughout this whole tale he remained silent and merely listened to what I said. "And once the troops went searching for me, I came back here," I said, finishing up my story. He took a sip of his whiskey. "Looks like my gut was telling the truth. You were going to need a whole mess of life force when you got back. Don't know if it'll be enough to give you that Siren friend of yours powers, but I had Clay bringing in whole shiploads of rach since you left. Got 'em in a crashed ship out in the jungle where they won't bother no one if they get out. Few thousand easy," he said smugly. "Just got back and you already have a feast laid out for me. You shouldn't have," I said with a wide smile. 600 plus life force times however many rach, let's say 2000, was easily over 1,000,000 units and definitely enough for me to grab Maya's Siren powers. Course you also got those Death World critters I had brought to here and even got in an arena to give 'em a fightin' chance like you wanted. A few of 'em died though since they couldn't live off the planet," he added with a measure of amusement when it killed my mood a bit. I sighed. "Yet I suppose it can't be helped if a fish taken out of water suffocates. Still, the bodies should have some traits that I want if nothing else," I say, slightly disappointed by the lack of challenge. While I was disappointed about the few creatures that died, I had considered this may happen as these creatures were adapted to their particular world and thus might straight up kick it if put in a different one. It's a bit like if you put a freshwater fish in salt water or the reverse and put a saltwater fish in fresh water. Either way, despite it being water, they will more often than not die since they weren't made for the deciding factor of the salt content or lack thereof. Still, the same traits that allowed the beasts to survive on Hydron were also the same ones I wanted to turn myself into a human cockroach. The planet was a hellscape of radiation and lightning, so naturally the creatures there should have traits related to resisting these things or even turning them into something helpful. In addition to that, the heavily metallic planet likely caused the beasts there to develop sturdy defensive traits that are just waiting for me to integrate. Perhaps even some form of rapid regeneration as well if I'm lucky. Bolter. Kraken. Blumit. Scythemere. Kyken. Radmare. Blightwing. Shadower. These 8 names represented the species that were brought from the Death World to Eden, 6 of which, the Blumit, Radmare, and Blightwing, died due to the missing atmospheric aspects they needed to survive. Obviously there were many more species that lived on the planet, but these were the larger and more easily found ones and thus what I had to work with. The corpses were put on ice after death so they hadn't decayed any when I was presented them shortly after I finished up with the old man. Blumit. Life Force 2032. Traits: Radiation Resistance Rare Grade 5000 units, Inorganic Consumption Rare Grade 5000 units, Poor Sight Trash Grade 50 units, Poor Hearing Trash Grade 50 units, Supreme Teeth Epic Grade 20,000 units, Dense Claws, Variant, Metallic, Rare Grade 5000 units. Radmare. Life Force 1630. Traits: Radiation Resistance Epic Grade 20,000 units, Energetic Sustenance, Radiation, Epic Grade 20,000 units, Powerful Muscles Rare Grade 5,000 units, Rooted Base Common Grade 500 units, Supreme Armored Hide Epic Grade 20,000 units. Blightwing. Life Force 3726. Traits: Shock Resistance Epic Grade 20,000 units, Radiation Resistance Rare Grade 5,000 units, Aerial Expertise Rare Grade 5,000 units, Sharp Vision Rare Grade 5,000 units, Energetic Sustenance, Shock, Epic Grade 20,000 units, Alpha Muscles Uncommon Grade 1,000 units. This was what I came face to face with from each of these species, and I had to admit I was looking forward to fighting the species that remained alive still. I grimaced at the price but grabbed Shock Resistance Epic Grade, Sharp Vision Rare Grade, Energetic Sustenance, Shock, Epic Grade, Radiation Resistance Epic Grade, Energetic Sustenance, Radiation, Epic Grade, Supreme Armored Hide Epic Grade, Inorganic Consumption Rare Grade, Supreme Teeth Epic Grade and Dense Claws, Variant, Metallic, Rare Grade for a price of 130,000 units. The pittance of life force I got back from the bodies in exchange was barely a drop in the bucket compared to what I spent. Still, I couldn't really complain as these traits would increase my survivability by a massive amount. With the addition of the shock and radiation resistance traits, I now have a resistance trait for 4 different elemental afflictions. 3 of which are at epic grade and thus almost as good as being immune. I say with a wide grin after collecting my traits. I almost pity the poor son of a bitch that tries to kill you at this point. Skin like armor, bones that are nigh unbreakable, regeneration and even near immunity to 2 of the most common elemental damage types and resistance to a 3rd. The old man says with a slight shudder as he clearly imagines trying to kill someone like me. Don't forget all my offensive traits too. Fuck killing me, they'd be lucky to survive meeting me. I said with a mad cackle. That they would be. Reminds me, but how's the egg going? He asked, moving on. So far so good, as it stands I just need for the thing to hatch and I'll have the closest thing to a dragon I can get. I said with a grin. Hope you know what you are doing making a monster like that, boy. If it goes feral even you'd likely have trouble putting it down. He said sternly. I chuckled. Everything should work out just fine. I said calmly. After that I had to wait for Clay to get back with the next shipment of Ratch, which was thankfully only a couple hours later, and I had him take me to the storage place that had the massive amount of the fucking invasive bastards. Everything burns. I yelled while cackling like a madman as I used my elemental body and fire breath to torch every single fucking bug rat thing I came across and looted that sweet life force. I ended up getting a staggering 1,614,792 units of life force as a result. Let me tell you, I felt higher than a motherfucker afterwards. Alexander Drake. Life force, 1,866,290. Integrated traits, gun expertise uncommon grade, clever mind uncommon grade x3, enhanced senses rare grade, omega body rare grade x4, superior bones rare grade, armored hide rare grade, bone regeneration uncommon grade, corrosion resistance uncommon grade, energy projection epic grade x2, superior vitality epic grade, flame breath uncommon grade, minor regeneration rare grade, iron stomach uncommon grade, disease resistance epic grade, amphibious lungs uncommon grade, thermal sensing uncommon grade, water resistance common grade, active camouflage epic grade, iridian engineering expertise mythical grade, amphibious lungs, water resistance, quick thinking, efficient lungs rare grade x2, fire resistance epic grade, elemental body, fire, legendary grade. Stored traits, energy reservoir epic grade, shock resistance epic grade, sharp vision rare grade, energetic sustenance, shock, epic grade, radiation resistance epic grade. Energetic sustenance, radiation, epic grade, supreme armored hide epic grade, inorganic consumption rare grade, supreme teeth epic grade, and dense claws, variant, metallic, rare grade. Chapter 35, Binge, 2. It was hard to describe the high that came from absorbing so much life force. It was like one long moment of warm bliss that I never wanted to end. I should probably mention I also looked downright demonic at the moment. Vast amounts of red energy flying through the air towards my body while my surroundings were on fire, all while my tattoos glowed brightly and I cackled like a madman. Yet I'd say I looked like the fucking devil having chosen to make an appearance. All good things had to come to an end though. When I finally adjusted to my new wealth of power, I was hit with the long-suppressed hunger inherent to my powers with a vengeance. I dealt with you once and I'll do it again as many times as it takes for you to understand that you fucking belong to me, and I'll die before letting a fucking instinct control me. I thought angrily as I violently pushed the hunger down again. You good kid? Got a bit snarly at the end there, made me a mite nervous. Clay asked with barely masked concern. Yeah, I'm fine now. My power's hunger tried to make a reappearance, but I kicked its shit back into the hole it crawled out of. I said reassuringly. This gonna be a reoccurring problem? He asked seriously. Nah, just showed up from eating too much life force at once is all. So long as I keep my meals small, it'll stay in the fucking cage. I said firmly. We headed back to the manor after that and had dinner before I headed into my house to integrate my new traits in case they make a mess. I stripped and sat down on the floor of my shower in preparation before squaring my attention on the traits I planned to integrate one at a time. First I nudged the shock resistance and radiation resistance traits to get them to integrate. Immediately my pores began to weep blood and my skin turned lighter and lighter until it was almost pale white with a faint odd red, blue and yellow tinge to it. Next up was sharp vision that fused into my enhanced senses trait and pushed it into the next grade, epic. Up next I went with inorganic consumption, which I fused with iron stomach for 5,000 units of life force to create true omnivore rare grade. I immediately threw up blood and flesh as my stomach and esophagus rebuilt themselves for their new purpose, which is to say consuming literally anything that wasn't pure energy. Once that was over with, I was nauseous but refused to stop until I was done. Supreme Armored Hide was next up and got fused with Armored Hide for free since I was pretty sure it was just the upgraded version of the trait. Once again my skin sloughed off, exposing the muscles underneath for a few agonizing but brief moments as new skin grew out over my body. The new skin was pale just like before but had a rough texture to it, not unlike stone, while somehow still being pliable enough to move as necessary. Next up I fused Supreme Teeth, Dense Claws, Variant, Metallic, and Superior Bones for a price of 20,000 units to create Biometallic Bones Epic Grade. I quickly came to regret that as my bones liquefied under my muscles and an insane amount agony assailed my mind as new ones made of organic metal regrew in their places. If it wasn't for my powers locking myself into a stiff shape during this process, I shudder to think of the misshapen creature I would have turned into. I passed out, thank fucking gods, as I doubted I would have been able to withstand the pain and maintain my current level of sanity otherwise. Finally all I had left to integrate was the 2 energetic sustenance traits, which I nudged as soon as I awoke from my pain-induced mini-coma. Oddly, however, there was no pain with this integration but rather a mild itch all over my body as my skin darkened slightly, and that was it. Honestly speaking, I didn't look much different than before this round of integrations, other than my skin being much paler and having a odd multicolored tinge to it, like I fucking slicked myself in antifreeze but failed to wash it all off. That didn't mean I didn't feel very fucking different. I was sluggish as shit as my new metal bones increased my weight by a fuckton and my muscles weren't happy about it. My skin also felt stiff and hard, which it was. Even worse was that all my senses were heightened to a ridiculous degree after the trait related to it reached epic grade, and my mind was struggling hard to handle it. Fuck. Every god's damn time. I cursed mentally as I sat huddled on the floor of my shower trying to adjust to the disorienting amount of stimulus I was getting. It took me nearly an entire hour to adapt to the enhancement of my senses and then another to clean up the mess in my shower, thank gods for alien disintegration tech. I hated every second of it though, as my every movement was strained from my muscles suddenly having an extra 70 pounds to deal with spread out along my whole body. It wasn't enough to overwhelm my muscles, but I had been pushed back down to human levels and then a little more. My legs in particular were suffering the most, and I'm pretty fucking sure if it wasn't for the ambush muscles I integrated a while back I wouldn't even be able to walk more than 5 minutes at a time. I slipped on my skin suit after I was done cleaning up and left my house to pass my good Jacob suit to the old man to get retailored. "Something wrong with you, boy?" he asked sternly. I chuckled. "I suppose you can say that. I integrated and fused those new traits I got and now I am having trouble moving since I weigh so fucking much. Not regretting it, mind you, just need to get some more muscle traits to balance things out is all. I say honestly. The hell kinda trait you get to fuck your weight up like that?" he asked astonished. "Biometallic Bones Epic Grade, my entire skeleton is now made of organic steel more or less. Adds an extra 70 or so pounds to me if my math's right," I said with a shrug. "You talkin' like one of them mechanical enhancements meant to make folk less squishy?" he asked, and I thought about it for a moment before nodding. "Kinda like that, but like way fucking better. These new bones of mine can heal like normal and even grow as I do. So basically normal bones but made of metal instead of, well, bone," I say with a grin. Not that I felt like I needed to grow much more, as I was already a solid 6 foot after getting that growth spurt on Athena's. Unfortunately, I knew damn well that I don't get any say in the matter, as my traits all but guarantee that I'll hit basketball player levels of tall by the time I'm done growing. That is to say 6'9" up to 7'5" depending on my luck. Unlike if I was a normal human, getting that big was actually to my benefit rather than detriment. See, thanks to my powers I will eventually reach superhuman standards in various regards, and that meant a certain size was needed to maximize the effects that entails. All that said, I still was slightly annoyed about the matter since I knew doorways were going to be a problem in the future. "You sure you want to go stuff in more traits into your body before you get used to these ones?" he asked seriously, and I nodded. "I need to get used to the changes as much as I can before I head to Pandora, and that means it's best if I get them as quick as I can," I say honestly. He didn't press the issue after that and took my word for it on trust. Since there was plenty of time left in the day, I headed out into the swamps nearby to hunt some jabbers for their strong body common grade trait to even out my body so I can fight the imported beasts from Hydron on my best footing. It took 4 copies at 500 units apiece to return me to normal, with the exception of my jump distance that was still slightly shorter than normal. My body filled out a bit more as a result, so now I was a thick slab of muscle. Thankfully my muscles weren't grotesquely massive, but at the very limit of what seemed normal to achieve for someone my size. I did a round of sim training and discovered something interesting: I was minorly bulletproof. Specifically small caliber rounds like the 22 simply left a bruise on impact with my skin but failed to penetrate at all. Against normal calibers like 45s the damage was moderately mitigated even if the bullets still penetrated. Headshots were also very ineffective against me as my skull being thick metal meant most bullets struggled not to ricochet off of it. I am talking simulation data wise anyways as I obviously hasn't going to test this shit with an actual gun. Back in business. I thought with a grin after matching my previous score in the sim room against a small platoon of armed enemies. I relaxed for the next 3 days so that I could start the new week out fresh and ready. I spent most of the days tinkering with my gun and shield to upgrade them with my new Iridian knowledge. I sent the Iridian armor I took off the corpse in the mountain cave into the crafter thing to turn it into raw materials that I used to have the machine spit out perfectly machined parts for my shield and gun. Name, Adaptive True Death. Level, Pearlescent/Unique. Type, Repeater Pistol. Damage type, N/A. Manufacturer, Drake. Customizations, Extended Barrel, Caliber Conversion Up, Textured Grip, DG Struct Auto Loading Mechanism, Iridian Metal Body, Elemental Affinity Up, Causality Double Shot. Affix, some say death is the end. If the Adaptive True Rebirth is equipped damage changes based on the element equipped to it. Name, Adaptive True Rebirth. Level, Pearlescent/Unique. Type, Shield. Damage type, N/A. Manufacturer, Drake. Customizations, Iridian Rewiring, Hexagonal Shielding, Iridian Metal Body, Elemental Resistance Up, Passive Healing Field. Affix, for you it's a new beginning. If the Adaptive Death is equipped shield shifts to whatever element is last used against it and the damage type for the Adaptive Death changes to counter it. Yeah, not gonna lie, I might have gone a tad overboard at remaking my gun and shield in my image. My gun was now a beast of a weapon that I managed to make fire 2 bullets every time I pulled the trigger, with the second bullet being this weird reality bent thing that didn't exist until I pulled the trigger and didn't get subtracted from my ammo store at all. Otherwise the gun just got a material upgrade and a bit of an elemental damage boost. My shield was a whole other matter as I effectively entirely rebuilt it. I replaced its casing, added extra Iridian wiring to boost energy efficiency and recharge rate, reorganized the shield pattern from the standard triangles, no idea why this is standard, to motherfucking hexagons, increased the elemental resistance after it swaps elements and managed to add a passive healing effect to it when it was still up, which meant I was even harder to kill now. Yay science! Alexander Drake. Life Force, 1,839,290. Integrated Traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Epic Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Supreme Armored Hide Epic Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade, Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance, Quick Thinking, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X2, Fire Resistance Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Fire, Legendary Grade, Shock Resistance Epic Grade, Energetic Sustenance, Shock, Epic Grade, Radiation Resistance Epic Grade, Energetic Sustenance, Radiation, Epic Grade, True Omnivore Rare Grade, Biometallic Bones Epic Grade. Stored Traits. Energy Reservoir Epic Grade. Chapter 36, Pearlescent and Beatdown. After I was done upgrading my gun and shield, I went to show them off to the old man and he practically lost it. Well, slather me in butter and call me a biscuit, that's a pearlescent weapon. He exclaimed as I set the gun on his desk and a huge silver blue aura of light came off it. What's the difference between this and legendary? Besides the light show? I asked curiously. Legendary weapons got unique effects as you know, but pearlescent is what a weapon or shield gets if it exceeds a certain quality while having a unique effect. Think of it as a higher form of legendary. They're rare, boy, only 24 known to exist in the 6 galaxies. 26 now. He said seriously as he looked over the gun fervently like he feared it would never be seen again. Extremely fucking rare, got it. Jacobs ever made any of these pearlescent weapons? I ask, interested in comparing my stuff to something in the same league. We've made 4 of the 24. An assault rifle, Becca. A sniper, Bessie. A second sniper, Godfinger. And a pistol, Unforgiven. Don't ask for none of them, boy, can't give them to you, don't have them anymore. Only ever seen the pistol myself before. A thief made off with it and it left Eden 6. The rest have been lost for a long time. He said seriously. The first two sound like Jacob's weapons, but what's with the last two names? I asked, confused about the epic but un-Jacobs-like names. Bit of a tale to that, take a seat and I'll tell you all about it. The old man said, surprisingly eager. I did as he said, and once I got comfortable he started the tales. It was during the life of Singleton Talbot Jacobs, the founder of the Jacobs Corporation, that the Godfinger was born. Tale goes that he sneezed while creating a rifle and caused the machine to make a mistake. Singleton was furious as a man who demanded perfection in all things but was professional enough to fire the rifle at least once before decommissioning it. To his great surprise, the shot he fired grew more powerful the longer it flew and left a white line of smoke like the finger of God come to reap a life. The name Godfinger stuck. The old man spoke with a rare proud smile and paused to take a sip of his drink before moving to the next tale. The Unforgiven was both my greatest achievement and shame to date. It was some 6 years past when I was overseeing the production of our newest line of pistols. Nobody knows how it happened and we've never been able to replicate it, but all the machines making the parts malfunctioned simultaneously while producing a single piece of a gun before returning to normal. It slipped under the radar until it was too late, and whether by coincidence or an act of God, all these malfunction parts were put together to create the pearlescent pistol. I barely got to see the shine of the weapon and moved to get it when a worker stole it and bolted. Lead a 2-month manhunt for the rat bastard before learning he'd been oft in a dispute and his killer took the gun and left Eden 6. Christened the pistol the Unforgiven to make it clear that Jacobs would never forget the theft. He said seriously. Why does it sound like luck had a lot to do with the creation of both of those? I questioned seriously. That's the way for all but a few pearlescent items. Yours are amongst the privileged little to get the quality through intentional improvement. He said very sternly, as if to press how important this fact was. Not for lack of trying, I assume. I ask and he nods. Many have tried to elevate legendary items to pearlescent, but only a few have succeeded. Some through luck and others like yourself through unique advantages. He said honestly. Kinda makes me want to take a crack at it with the other legendary I have, the one from the vault. Hyperion rocket launcher by name of Nidhogg that shoots a rocket that turns into 6 smaller rockets at a certain distance that shoot straight down. Not really my style, as you can tell. I say honestly. Familiar with the line, but I don't suggest it. Hyperion takes their copyrights seriously and might come after you if you tamper with it and they find out. He says gruffly. Good thing I didn't mess with it then. Still kinda annoying that the first legendary I find as loot turns out to be one I don't want, but it is what it is, I guess. I say with a shrug. He nods. That reminds me, but what of your alien tech gun that you talked about? He asked curiously. I sighed at that. Need more iridium metal to make it, but seraphs aren't exactly fucking common, so I am at a standstill on that front at the moment. I said, a little frustrated. Annoyingly, iridium tech was specifically designed with their strange materials in mind, and since my bullshit alien engineering knowledge didn't extend to metallurgy, I was kinda fucked without a source of the metal to use. The metal I got from the armor was barely enough to cover my upgrades to my gun and shield, and I was left with barely enough to make a fucking fork from. I let the old man get back to work after that as I headed to the arena he got set up for me to fight the imported creatures. It was a cheap thing thrown together without any intention of it lasting very long, but sturdy enough to keep the creatures from escaping in a short amount of time. Design-wise, it was a large thick-walled circular dome with steel bars woven over the top to keep the stuff inside without costing a lot of money to create. I wasn't bothered by this fact though, as I only needed to use it until I killed all the imported species that were left alive. Considering that there were only 5 to go through, it wouldn't take long at all, maybe a day or 2. When I got into the center of the arena, the person in charge of the arena released my first prey item, a bolter. It was easy to see where the name came from, even if I thought it on the fucking nose. The creature in question looked a bit like a mix of a cheetah and alligator in that it had hard, rough scaled skin and a lithe feline form that had a long flat tail attached to the back of it. The head was downright fucking prehistoric looking, with a rounded skull and long snout with sharp teeth in full view. The reason I said the name was on the nose though was the sparks of electricity rippling across its whole body, making it glow dangerously. Something like a jaguar, judging from those neck and jaw muscles. The stance makes me think it's got some speed to it as well. That electricity might prove a bit tricky since the bullets are still magnetic to a degree. Looks like I get to have some fun. I thought, sizing up the beast as it did the same. I didn't draw my gun this time, but spread my feet into a strong stance and held my arms at the ready. I was going to fight this thing bare fucking handed, and I had no intention of losing. I hadn't done this since my time on Earth, and I gods damned missed it. The adrenaline, my mistress encouraged me and I was ready. The bolter seemed to sense my challenge and growled loudly before kicking off the stone floor of the area to charge me. Grrrrrrrrrr. My stance shifted slightly with my right foot behind me on the toes and I waited with my muscles primed. What followed next was best described as a one-sided beatdown. The beast got within 2 meters of me and lunged for my throat. Quick as a whip my right foot lashed out and with a crack, struck the flat bottom of its jaw. My shield flickered as it nullified the shock from the physical contact and switched to being resistant to shock while my gun got corrosive shots, not that I was going to use it here. The sheer weight behind my kick was more than enough to send the beast spinning through the air with me rushing it immediately without mercy. I snatched its tail out of the air and full over the shoulder slammed it into the stone floor causing it to crack on impact. I then stomped on the back of its neck between its skull and neck vertebrae killing it instantly as the bones gave way to my brutal force. "Oh yeah, that's the good shit," I said with a grin as I stepped off the twitching corpse. Bolter. Life Force, 2309. Traits: Shock Resistance Rare Grade 5000 units, Predator Muscles Common Grade 500 units, Armored Hide Rare Grade 5000 units, Crushing Jaws Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Hard Teeth Common Grade 500 units, Elemental Body, Shock, Rare Grade 5000 units. Oh. That comes in a lower grade than Legendary. I thought, surprised at the Elemental Body, Shock, trait. I wasn't surprised about the creature having the ability as the Echonet had plenty of records of creatures with elemental bodies, but I thought that series of traits was legendary at least due to the bug, but it seems I was misunderstanding that it was the exception rather than rule. If this creature's trait was anything to go off of, these type of traits were actually much less rare than I thought. Not that I minded at all, as I didn't hesitate to grab that trait along with Shock Resistance, Predator Muscles and Crushing Jaws for a total price tag of 11,500 units of life force. "Damn kid, remind me never to piss you off," I heard a voice say as the corpse turned to dust after I grabbed the traits and life force. I looked over to the source. "When you get here, Clay?" I asked my favorite dark-skinned smuggler. "Just about the same time you punted the thing across the air like it wasn't as big as me," he said with a pitying look at the pile of dust. "So you got the whole fight then, whatcha think?" I asked, curious about his thoughts on the matter. "I think Pandora's not going to know what hit it. That thing didn't so much as make you break a sweat before you killed it, barehanded to boot," he says, clearly very impressed. Yet I must admit to being a tad disappointed at how easy that was, but I suppose that's the whole fucking point of these traits, ain't it? I said with a shrug. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 1,830,099. Integrated Traits: Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Epic Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Supreme Armored Hide Epic Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade, Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance, Quick Thinking, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X2, Fire Resistance Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Fire, Legendary Grade, Shock Resistance Epic Grade, Energetic Sustenance, Shock, Epic Grade, Radiation Resistance Epic Grade, Energetic Sustenance, Radiation, Epic Grade, True Omnivore Rare Grade, Biometallic Bones Epic Grade. Stored Traits: Energy Reservoir Epic Grade, Shock Resistance Rare Grade, Predator Muscles Common Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Crushing Jaws Uncommon Grade, Elemental Body, Shock, Rare Grade. Chapter 37, Octodi. Yeah, still hard to reconcile the you I first met all those months ago with the you now, he said honestly. I shrugged. It's just how my powers work, plus I've gotten a few lucky breaks that have given me some banger traits, I say casually as I walk over to him. Ain't that the truth? Never thought I'd see a person breathe fire or cover themselves in it without dying. Just glad you aren't one of those psycho nuts that'd declare themselves a god after getting a bit of power, he said with a chuckle. Nah, gonna save that for when I'm able to threaten a whole ass planet just by existing, I joke with a grin. I'd laugh if I didn't think you'd actually get there eventually. Not saying it'll be easy, mind, but at the rate you're going looks like a matter of time, he said with a shrug. Well, you gonna stick around for the next beastie or headed somewhere else? I asked, changing the topic. "I've got nothing better to do, so I'll hang about to watch you work for a bit," he said, and I nodded before motioning the keeper dude to release the next beast. A cage door opens up at the end of the arena and a long glowing yellow tentacle reaches out, followed shortly by another and another until the beast fully dragged itself out into the open. "That's a big-ass octopus," I thought, astonished. Indeed, this creature that was appropriately named Kraken was what appeared to be a massive cephalopod. It had 12 long thick glowing yellow tentacles with barbed tips and thick-looking plates of metallic armor and a body easily 20 feet long and 8 feet wide in the standard bulbous boneless form most octopi have. The creature's body, much like its tentacles, glowed yellow and had many metallic armor plates over it. Honestly, it would look like a tough customer if only it didn't have 3 huge red eyes that practically screamed weak point. I flat out ignored the fact that the creature was clearly capable of breathing air and didn't need to stay wet to survive, unlike literally all octopi I was familiar with. This reality had some fucking weird creatures, so this wasn't enough to make me bothered at all. I casually drew my gun and pulled the trigger 3 times in rapid succession at one of the eyes. The 3 bullets bizarrely turned into 6 mid-flight, and the first was the only one to land on my target as the tentacles blurred and tanked the rest. So that's how it is, hey. Alright, let's see how you like fire, I thought upon figuring out the creature's gimmick. It was a simple but effective one, really: defensive surprise factor. Those armor plates were there to protect the creature from harm, but the really important part was that the tentacles were basically whip strike fast to catch whatever was attacking it off guard. In a manner of speaking, this creature traded movement for defense and retaliation or ambush ability. There was a big problem with this, however: sustained damage. Anything that causes damage over time, like acid or fire, were the bane of this type of creature, as it simply couldn't escape it. In its native environment it wouldn't encounter something like that easily, but this was not it, and I was not a part of its natural food chain. I sucked in air loudly as my chest puffed up drastically, and I activated my fire-breathing trait as I exhaled in a controlled manner. A thick yellow gout of flames erupts from my mouth and bathes the arena in fire within a cone shape that the creature sat within the end of. Yes. The creature hissed in pain and flailed its tentacles to try and fend off the fire, but unlike bullets, fire wasn't a solid object you could swat away. The glowing flesh of the octopi sizzled and burned as the flames scorched it for as long as I breathed out, which was unfortunately only about 15 seconds. The only reason I could breathe out for so long and at such intensity was because of the enhancements my lungs had gotten. Still, once the flames vanished, since there was no fuel for them, I got to see the damage that my attack had done. Oh! How clever! I thought, quite pleased to see that after the initial panic the creature prioritized survival over comfort and bundled its armored tentacles over its body, sacrificing them to protect its vitals. The creature hissed angrily as it unwound its tentacles that no doubt hurt like hell and glared murderously at me. I raised an eyebrow in interest as I saw the glowing scorched flesh of its tentacles begin to bubble and repair itself visibly. I wasn't surprised, since even on Earth octopi had strong regenerative abilities, though nothing this extreme. I pointed my gun at the beast yet again and pulled the trigger before moving my aim and doing it again. 4 bullets aimed at currently vulnerable parts shot out and caused serious damage as 2 of the 12 tentacles were severed at the base. I reloaded and pulled the trigger another 3 times with 3 different targets, severing another 3 tentacles. I had to quickly dodge, however, as the beast cleverly grabbed its severed appendages and used the extra reach it gave it to whip them at me. Its aim was off a bit due to unfamiliarity with this sort of attack, but the rapid adaptation it was showing to it told me that just like octopi on Earth, this fucker was smarter than a normal beast. Perhaps not sentient, but close enough to problem solve quickly and improvise tools. I pulled the trigger as I dodged the wild strikes that were getting more and more accurate, blasting off another tentacle for a total of 5 of 12 being severed. It became inevitable that I would be struck at this point, as 5 of the beast's tentacles whipped at me with its severed tentacles while it had 2 left to defend itself. When the blow came, I wasn't disappointed as my shield flickered and I was pressed back against the wall of the arena. The beast went frenzied at this success and began raining whip strikes down on me that my shield was barely holding up under and rapidly depleting. Taking a deep breath, I unleashed the entirety of my fire breath all at once in a briefly blue-hot eruption, actually causing critical damage to the beast this time, as it couldn't fully protect its body from the fire. The metallic plates at the top part of its body were melted slag while it chose to protect its eyes the best it could. I didn't just sit back while it did this, but emptied my gun, taking off another 2 tentacles and exposing one of its eyes. I reloaded and unloaded my gun for a total of 14 bullets, all aimed at that exposed eye, and the beast was forced to sacrifice another 3 tentacles to stop the barrage, leaving it only 2. I reloaded and grinned predatorily. It was a food fight, I said, complimenting it as I unloaded on it, now that it was unable to fully block my shots as I aimed for all 3 eyes simultaneously. It tried, but half the bullets went through and green corrosive damage exploded in the soft targets, ruining them and sending the beast screaming in agony as it flailed around. I didn't make it suffer for long and unloaded my gun into the remaining eye, which did the trick of killing it as I picked up its status with my powers now. Kraken. Life Force, 2191. Traits, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Quick Thinking Rare Grade 5000 units, Multilimbed Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Radiation Resistance Epic Grade 20,000 units, Regeneration Epic Grade 20,000 units, Hyper Flexibility Rare Grade 5000 units, Biometallic Armor Plates, Iron, Rare Grade 5000 units. I wasn't too surprised at the traits the beast had, as I had more or less expected them from its performance. That said, I had to admit that this thing was impressively built, and for anyone else may have proven a difficult to overcome foe without using grenades or launchers. I didn't hesitate to shell out the life force to grab Clever Mind, Quick Thinking, Radiation Resistance, Regeneration, and Hyperflexibility for a total price of 51,000 units. I got a small amount back from the corpse, but not really enough to lessen the sting of spending so much. Not that I was too bothered by this, given the veritable storm of life force I had swirling within me at the moment. That might change when I went back to Athena's to grab a copy of Maya's powers, but that was assuming I still had enough by the time I went through all these beasts that were costing me quite the sum so far. The corpse turned into a large pile of dust, and after I grabbed the traits and life force and I holstered my gun with a content smile. Had me worried for a moment there when it was wailing on you with those tentacles. Clay said as I walked over. I nodded, yet I was under some serious fucking pressure from that and had to take a risk that it'd switch to defense if I sent some flames its way. Paid off in the end though. I said with a grin. Hiluva maneuver, gotta give it to you. So did ya get anything good from the calamari? He asked curiously. Some brain traits, a flexibility trait, a resistance trait, and Regina motherfucking ration. I said with a wide grin. Like regrow your arm, Regan, or just faster normal healing? He asked eagerly. Regrowing an arm is actually 2 or 3 traits, but very fast normal healing more or less. Cuts and bruises are no longer an issue for me. I said happily. Damn, really going for that immortal build, hey? Can't say as I blame you, it's one of those things everyone seems to want after all. He said with an impressed whistle. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 1,781,290. Integrated Traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Epic Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Supreme Armored Hide Epic Grade, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Minor Regeneration Rare Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade, Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade, Amphibious Lungs, Water Resistance, Quick Thinking, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X2, Fire Resistance Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Fire, Legendary Grade, Shock Resistance Epic Grade, Energetic Sustenance, Shock, Epic Grade, Radiation Resistance Epic Grade, Energetic Sustenance, Radiation, Epic Grade, True Omnivore Rare Grade, Biometallic Bones Epic Grade. Stored Traits. Energy Reservoir Epic Grade, Shock Resistance Rare Grade, Predator Muscles Common Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade, Crushing Jaws Uncommon Grade, Elemental Body, Shock, Rare Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade, Quick Thinking Rare Grade, Radiation Resistance Epic Grade, Regeneration Epic Grade, Hyper Flexibility Rare Grade. Chapter 38, What a List. I don't know about immortality, but at the very least I want to make killing me really fucking hard, as close to impossible as I can get in fact. I said with a grin. Isn't that kinda the same thing? He asked confused. More or less yet. I said with a chuckle. He shrugged. Whatever works for you. You gonna kill another critter or that it for you for the day? He asked, changing the subject. That was it for today. I'd be bored if I killed them all at once, so I think I'll stretch the last few out over the next 3 days. I said honestly before moving to a different topic. What about you? Got anything interesting going on? I asked casually. Nah, bit of a quiet time at the moment. Not all that common, but it happens. He said with a shrug. Cool cool, want to help me conduct some probably highly illegal and morally questionable experiments? I asked with a grin as he froze. Help in what regard? He asked suspicious. Not on you G's. No, I need your help wrangling up some bandits so I can experiment on them with my powers, test if I can pass traits to folks already done growing, that sorta thing. I said, mildly offended by the mere idea that I would treat him so cruelly despite being friends. Sorry about the misunderstanding, can't ever be sure with people and experimentation. Tell you what, I'll wrangle up a dozen bandits for free as a way to make up for it, sound good? He offered and I grinned. That'd be swell, besides if this works out you and the old man are top of the list for some upgrades. I said with a wink. That certainly seemed to motivate him as he wasted no time at all getting his ass in gear and hightailing it to the nearest fast travel station. I just laughed at that and made my way to the nearest jabber troop, needed traits to conduct my experiments with after all. One small round of population control later and I had 6 stacks of the 4 traits I could get from the normal members of the species: dexterous hands common grade, clever mind uncommon grade, strong nose uncommon grade and strong body common grade. Naturally I had a few different experiments in mind with these traits. For example, with strong body I planned to test raw injection, putting the trait as is into the body, and fusion with the already existing trait of that type. As I had long since realized, most creatures had a body trait of some sort in regards to their musculature. So one of my experiments was going to be seeing if giving another different body trait without fusing it to the original worked, or if it needed to be fused first. I also needed to test if adding life force to the target beforehand helped at all with the integration or not. For the other traits I was also going to be checking for any side effects after the integration should that prove successful. I already knew that strong nose would cause some sensory overload, but that should fade given time for the brain to adjust. The biggest one I was planning to keep an eye on was for the clever mind trait. This trait directly messed with the composition of the brain, so it was really fucking important to make sure giving it to someone didn't make their head explode or some ridiculous event like that. There was also a non-zero chance that giving the trait to a bandit might return them to sanity if they weren't already sane. I say this because some madmen had actually researched bandits and discovered that only about 70% of them were genuinely fucked in the head. The rest were just assholes with little morals. This explained how the clans of bandits didn't somehow implode over a particularly curvy piece of wood or some other fucking weird reason. In case it wasn't clear, the ones who were not fucked in the head tended to be the ones keeping everyone in the clans from killing each other for no apparent reason. While I doubted Clay would manage to capture any of these individuals, if he did I could study how the mind trait worked on both an insane and not person. After my hunt with the jabbers I headed back to the manor. Of course by that I mean I used my house's teleporter to get there since I was being lazy. It's good to be me, I thought with a chuckle as I stripped to integrate my current stockpile of traits, except for energy reservoir of course. Shock resistance, radiation resistance, predator muscles, armored hide and crushing jaws got fused into my own traits that already covered them for a small upgrade in those areas. The real changes came when I integrated quick thinking rare grade, elemental body, shock, rare grade, regeneration epic grade and hyper flexibility rare grade. My brain shut off directly when I integrated quick thinking, but I had sort of expected this given my experience with clever mind, which was a whole grade lower. When I woke up after the integration was complete, the change wasn't qualitative so much as quantitative. Quick thinking didn't improve the way my brain solved problems so much as how fast it did it. To explain this in an easy to understand way, if before I thought at a speed of 1 thought per second, now I thought at 3 thoughts per second. What I thought hadn't been changed, but how much I thought in the same time span had. I won't lie, this really fucked with my head for a minute or two, as it was almost like my perception of time had been skewed, as it felt like every second was now longer than before. It also explained how the creature I got the trait from had been able to adjust to its circumstances so fast. The potential of this trait had me salivating, as I theorized immediately that if raised enough this trait could provide a sort of pseudo-prescience, seeing the future. In theory, if I could make enough observations in a short enough span of time, I could predict the outcome before it ever happened, which would render me basically untouchable. Naturally that was a far in the future type deal, so I didn't focus for all too long. Regeneration fused with minor regeneration, since it was obviously the higher version of it, and besides a sort of tingle all over my body, nothing really happened. That was to be expected, however, as it was a passive trait that only did something upon injury, so I wasn't bothered by it. Hyperflexibility was entirely fucking different, as the moment I integrated it my entire musculature burned. My previously protruding and slightly cumbersome muscles compacted and toned down without losing any potency, as my body was forcefully made ludicrously flexible. I had gone from looking kinda bulky to just a hair away from twig-like, which was off-putting to say the least. Still, I couldn't say I didn't approve of my new figure, as it was tight and efficient with few places where claws or blades could catch easy. When I integrated the shock variant of elemental body, I got a rather unusual sensation as my tattoos stretched slightly over my right shoulder. If I had to describe it, I'd say it was almost like an attraction between the shock and fire elemental body traits. At the same time there was this feeling of incompatibility as well that I quickly figured out the cause of. The two traits could fuse, however I needed other traits as well, and to top it off they all had to reach the same grade as well. This was going to prove a pain in the ass to pull off, as the fire variant was legendary grade and the shock was merely rare. If I wasn't wrong, there was also a cryo and corrosive elemental body trait that also had to be fucking legendary grade for the fusion. Needless to say, that was going in the way the fuck in the future a list of things to do right next to collecting all the Siren power traits. I tested the difference between the rare grade shock body and legendary grade flame one, and there was no fucking comparison. The legendary grade trait allowed me to, if a bit unsafely, approach the peak possible intensity of that elemental damage type. The rare grade shock trait though got me nowhere near the intensity of weak lightning, much less the pinnacle of the stuff. Don't get me wrong, I still gave off a lethal amount of electricity, but I couldn't compare to a bolt of the weakest lightning possible. I assumed that I would require at least the epic grade trait to reach that point, and who the fuck knew how many rare grade versions of the trait it would take to get that upgrade. Still, it was nice to know that if I wanted to I could jump-start a car by pressing 2 fingers on the battery. Much like the flame version, I could also control whether the element came from a single point on my body or all of it. I was sorta tempted to test somebody with a handshake, which was an impulse I pushed down hard. With this round of integrations down, I got dressed again and left my house after feeding my pet egg some life force. The next 3 days kinda blurred together, as even my fights with the beasts in the arena were lackluster and boring. I did get some more traits though, so that was worth mentioning. Radiation resistance epic grade 20,000 units, energetic sustenance, radiation, epic grade 20,000 units, powerful muscles rare grade 5,000 units, supreme armored hide epic grade 20,000 units, shock resistance epic grade 20,000 units x2, sharp vision rare grade 5,000 units, energetic sustenance, shock, epic grade 20,000 units, elemental body, shock, rare grade 5,000 units, strong circulation epic grade 20,000 units, minor spatial awareness epic grade 20,000 units. Honestly speaking, all of the beasts just had repeats of the previous ones I had harvested already, or traits I had no use for. Besides the shadower that had the last 2 traits listed, that is, not that it made the fight any less pathetic, as the shitty thing keeled over after a single headshot. Anyways, I integrated all of this into my already integrated traits to get a nice general boost in those traits. Strong circulation was a bit different in that it actually increased the richness of my blood, so my body was now way more efficient with everything I put in it. Minor spatial awareness was kind of funky, as it let me perceive an area of space around my body in every direction vaguely. It was hard to describe it better than generalized omnipresence. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 1,568,290. Integrated traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade x3, Enhanced Senses Epic Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade x4, Supreme Armored Hide Epic Grade x2, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade x2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Regeneration Epic Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade, Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade, Quick Thinking, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade x2, Fire Resistance Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Fire, Legendary Grade, Shock Resistance Epic Grade x3, Energetic Sustenance, Shock, Epic Grade x2, Radiation Resistance Epic Grade x3, Energetic Sustenance, Radiation, Epic Grade x2, True Omnivore Rare Grade, Biometallic Bones Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Shock, Rare Grade x2. Quick Thinking Rare Grade, Hyper Flexibility Rare Grade, Strong Circulation Epic Grade, Minor Spatial Awareness Epic Grade. Stored Traits, Energy Reservoir Epic Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade x7, Dexterous Hands Common Grade x6, Strong Nose Uncommon Grade x6, Strong Body Common Grade x6. Chapter 39, Experiments. It was on the 4th day that things became worth talking about again. See, I woke up and got dressed in my newly tailored suit that fit perfectly now. On my waist was my pistol and shield as I left my room in the manor. Did you need something, Baldrin? I asked, surprised to find the man waiting outside my room. Yes, Mr. Clay has returned and informed me to let you know that he has your materials in the housing ship that the Ratch were stored previously. The butler said calmly. Ah. Good news then, thank you for passing on the message, Baldrin. I thank him and he nods before leaving to no doubt get back to his normal work. I head through the wooden hallways and briefly pause as I pass the doorway to the old man's study but decide not to bother him as I continue to the fast travel machine located just outside the manor. I punched in the location of the downed storage ship we used for the Ratch previously and let the machine do its thing as I broke apart into pure data that was transferred to the ship in a few moments. The first thing that hit me when I arrived was the angry banging of the bandits in their cages and the smell of piss, shit, and blood. Looking around, I spotted Clay leaning back in a chair smoking a cigar as he performed maintenance on one of his guns. "They didn't give you too much trouble, I take it?" I asked as I walked over to him. "Nah, dumb bastards walked right into the cages after I put up signs that said free guns on it," he said with a chuckle without looking up from his gun. "Did you manage to get any that weren't insane by chance?" I asked, amused at the story. "Nope, got shot at by them though when I picked up their friends here. The guns on my ship ain't for show though, so they didn't live to regret it," he said, and we both chuckled at that. Not ideal, but I expected as much. "What's the count?" I asked curiously. "Used to be 14, but 2 of the more insane of them bashed their brains out against the bars, so we only have 12 of them," he said with a shrug. "Explains the smell of blood. Still, that's more than enough, thanks for the help. You gonna stick around for this next bit or not?" I asked, and he thought about it for a moment. "Think I'll stick around to see how this turns out. Not like I'm squeamish, and who knows, might even learn something," he said casually. I shrugged at that, since it honestly made no difference to me whether he stayed or not. Walking over to the nearest cage after that, I took a look at the inhabitant curiously. I had of course seen what a standard bandit psycho looked like from the Echonet, but it was different than seeing one in person. "I'll wear your eyelids to hide the sun," the bandit yelled as he lunged at me from within the cage while breathing heavily. I snapped out my arm and caught the lunatic by the throat and hoisted them up easily before looking them over. Disgusting sun-baked skin, athletic body, chipped nails, ratty clothes, and a foul body odor. Also clearly deranged, I noted mentally before checking the thrashing psycho's traits. Human, psycho. Life force, 825. Traits, athletic body common grade 500 units, broken mind trash grade 50 units, maniacal creation rare grade 5000 units, buzz axe expertise uncommon grade 1000 units, poor smell trash grade 50 units. "You'll do well enough," I said calmly before pushing a copy of Clever Mind out through the hand holding the bandit up by his throat. I casually released my hold on the bandit as I felt the trait leave me and stepped back to watch the results. Pink screams. "No. No. You won't make me white," the psycho screams while clutching his head and writhing on the ground. After a few minutes the scream stopped and the psycho lay on the ground shuddering. I reached through the bars of the cage and grabbed the ankle of the bandit to see what the damage was. Human, psycho. Life force, 525. Traits, athletic body common grade 500 units, split mind epic grade 20,000 units, maniacal creation rare grade 5,000 units, buzz axe expertise uncommon grade 1,000 units, poor smell trash grade 50 units. I certainly didn't expect this. I thought, surprised by what I saw. The first thing I noticed was the drop in life force the bandit had. The really surprising part though was the effect that integrating Clever Mind had on the psycho. See, I was sorta correct in that the brain trait tried to forcefully make the mind of the bandit become sane. What I hadn't expected however was that the bandit rejected the new sane ego forming to such a great degree that he developed split personality disorder. There was now 2 fucking personalities inside one body, one sane the other insane. I was halfway tempted to integrate yet another Clever Mind into the bandit to see if that completely removes the insane personality, but I decided to repeat the experiment on another bandit instead to make sure this wasn't a one-off fluke. The rest of the bandits pressed themselves against the far wall of their cages as I approached, no doubt in fear after witnessing what happened to the previous bandit. It made no difference to me if they were willing or otherwise, and I had Clay open a cage so I could continue my experiment. Like a rabid animal the bandit lunged at me, but I handled them with the same ease as the previous one and integrated the trait into them before waiting on the results. When I checked on this new bandit's status after they were clearly done screaming, I was intrigued by what I found. Once again the bandit developed split personality disorder as 2 egos were now present in one body. With this pretty much now set as the baseline for mental traits going into a psycho, I integrated yet another copy of Clever Mind into the bandit to see what would happen. There was no screaming this time, but merely some groaning before they went quiet again. I frowned however when I saw that the trait actually showed up this time, but the split personality trait remained. So if a brain trait is given to an insane person, they develop a second sane personality, but if another copy is added on top of the first, the two personalities remain but both get the true benefits of the trait added. I muttered calmly. What about if you gave it to someone who was sane already? Clay asked worriedly. I don't know, none of these bandits are sane, so I can't test the idea, but considering that it tried to introduce sanity to them, probably nothing beyond what it was supposed to do originally. I said with a helpless shrug. So the mind traits might be safe, but you can't say one way or the other without testing it? He asked, and I nodded. More or less. Time to test the physical traits, since those should be more definitive in the results. I said, leaving the cage and having it locked behind me. I then grabbed another bandit and forced strong body into them despite their resistance. This time even Clay paled as the flesh of the bandit squirmed and broke apart as the athletic body was forcibly pushed even further in a terrifying display of power. Human, Psycho. Life Force, 301. Traits, Alpha Muscles Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Broken Mind Trash Grade 50 units, Maniacal Creation Rare Grade 5000 units, Buzzax Expertise Uncommon Grade 1000 units, Poor Smell Trash Grade 50 units. So the integration forced the fusion of the two like traits at the cost of the bandit's own life force. So if I were to inject life force before the integration, the recipient would be fine afterwards. I theorized as I left the cage and had it locked again. I tested this theory on yet another bandit and confirmed that the integration went smoothly after I injected some life force into them. I think I can say that yes, as a matter of fact, I can give traits to others fairly safely. I said to Clay, who was waiting for a verdict. You say that, but it didn't look safe at all, or pleasant for that matter. He said, throwing a look at the now more muscular bandit that had passed out from the pain. Okay, yeah, it's not exactly a fun process, but it is safe. Besides, it's not like you have to have them, it's simply an option if you wanted it. I say honestly. Think I'll pass, but I'll keep it in mind. He said, and I didn't push the issue. I killed all of the bandits after that and took a copy of Buzzax Expertise and the Life Force, but that was it. I didn't bother wasting time and directly integrated it and found the concept simple but genius and insane at the same time. Buzzaxes were a weird hybrid weapon between a saw and an axe, as the axe head was replaced by a saw blade that spun rapidly using a very small but powerful motor. They were clearly the product of an ill mind, but somehow became the psycho weapon of choice to great and deadly effect. The only reason I took the expertise trait for the weapon was that I thought it might possibly be able to fuse with other weapon or item expertises to create a higher graded trait, weapon expertise or something like that maybe. Even if it couldn't, there wasn't exactly any harm in grabbing the trait, as all it was an understanding of how to use that particular weapon. With this business taken care of, we both headed back to the manor for the day to let the old man know what we found out. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 1,577,319. Integrated Traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Epic Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Supreme Armored Hide Epic Grade X2, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Regeneration Epic Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade, Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade, Quick Thinking, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X2, Fire Resistance Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Fire, Legendary Grade, Shock Resistance Epic Grade X3, Energetic Sustenance, Shock, Epic Grade X2, Radiation Resistance Epic Grade X3, Energetic Sustenance, Radiation, Epic Grade X2, True Omnivore Rare Grade, Biometallic Bones Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Shock, Rare Grade X2. Quick Thinking Rare Grade, Hyper Flexibility Rare Grade, Strong Circulation Epic Grade, Minor Spatial Awareness Epic Grade, Buzzax Expertise Uncommon Grade. Stored Traits, Energy Reservoir Epic Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X4, Dexterous Hands Common Grade X6, Strong Nose Uncommon Grade X6, Strong Body Common Grade X4. Chapter 40, Upgrades People. You mean to tell me that all it costs to get those traits you've been gorging yourself on is a bit of suffering and life force? The old man asked gruffly. I literally just said that. I said with an annoyed look. Don't get snappy with me, boy, this needs clarity. He said, and I sighed. Yes, you need to suffer through the integration process just like I would, but other than the extra life force you'd need to not drop life expectancy, that's it. One trait is non-negotiable in that you will be getting it, disease resistance. You, Wainwright, Clay and Hammerlock will all be getting a copy of this trait. I say seriously. He glared at me. You think you can force me to do anything I don't want to, boy? He asked fiercely. In this case, yes. I'm stronger, faster, and all I need is it grab you for it to be all over already. If you never see it coming, by the time you can say or do anything to stop me, I will already have finished. I say confidently. Good. The strong take and the weak got no right to argue. So long as you've got the best in mind for Jacobs, you'll find the shadow of the old tree will always shade you. He said with the barest hint of a smile. Well shit kid, don't we get any say in this matter? Clay complained. Of course you do, never said I would listen though. I said with a grin, and he sighed. Yet I shoulda guessed. He says with a wry smile as he shook his head. Can't really bellyache about it either, Clay, as it will be good for us in the end. The old man said with a shrug. He's not wrong. Besides, if it really bothers you, you could just get anesthesia first so you don't feel a thing. I said casually. That was an option? He asked incredulously. I scoffed. For anyone other than me yet? I have to be awake to start the process, which means none of that knockout gas for me, but since I'm giving the traits to you, there's no reason why you would need to be awake for it, since it's biological in nature rather than mental or spiritual. I said honestly. Well, I got no argument then. He said, now totally fine with it. Couldn't really fucking blame him, as no one other than a masochist, the insane, or someone with no other option would willingly suffer like that. I fell in the first category, by the way, since all adrenaline junkies are masochistic. It's literally how we get our high. In my particular case, there was also a good helping of the last type of person as well, since that was the only way to make the most of my powers. Clay wanting to avoid unnecessary suffering was pretty natural as a result, and not something to be held against him. That pretty much sealed the deal for what I would be doing for the last couple months before Pandora called my name. First and foremost, I had to collect the traits that each of my closest people would be receiving. The list was as follows. Montgomery Jacobs, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade, Dexterous Hands Common Grade. Wainwright Jacobs, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Precise Vision Rare Grade, Dexterous Hands Common Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade. Alistair Hammerlock, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Precise Vision Rare Grade, Strong Nose Uncommon Grade, Strong Body Common Grade, Keen Hearing Common Grade, Tough Skin Common Grade. Clay, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Iron Stomach Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade, Dexterous Hands Common Grade, Precise Vision Rare Grade, Alpha Muscles Uncommon Grade, Armored Hide Rare Grade. Maya, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Beautiful Form Rare Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade, Strong Vitality Uncommon Grade, Strong Body Common Grade. Besides disease resistance, the traits each of my close group chose for themselves represented their own interests and jobs. The old man took a trait to help with his alcoholism, and the rest were chosen to help him run the corporation better. For Wainwright it was the same, with the exception to the trait he wanted to improve his admittedly piss-poor eyesight. He wasn't blind or even close to it, but his perception past about 7 feet made him unable to use any gun other than a shotgun with any decent amount of accuracy. Hammerlock straight up wanted an upgrade all around to make himself a better hunter. Clay's list might have coincided with Wainwright and Hammerlock's to a degree, but that was apparently because he thought those traits would improve his ability as a gunslinger and smuggler. I could see how too if I really thought about what each trait did and how that could be used to do what he does. Maya was more a special addition to my list, as I planned to go back to Athena's to grab a copy of her powers trait. I figured that I'd give my best girl a boost while I was at it, since I very fucking much doubted she wasn't going to go vault hunting in a few years. I also threw Beautiful Form into the mix because why the fuck not? Collecting these traits took me a whole ass month and a half, mostly because of tracking down enough Ednian blood feathers to get all the disease resistance traits. It also cost me a nice chunk of my life force stores, but it was worth it in my opinion. 138,500 units just for the traits themselves, and an additional 10,000 units split 5 ways to allow them to integrate the traits without using up their lifespan. The first to undergo the transformation was Wainwright, who was way too fucking eager in my opinion. Naturally, the old man had already gotten the knockout gas ready and had special clean room set up for the inevitable mess. Time's a wastin', let's get this done so we can get to celebratin', Wainwright said as he laid down in the hospital robe on the floor of the clean room before the gas took him. I shrugged and crouched down next to him once it was clear he was fully out and placed my hand on his chest. I sent in each of his traits one after the other, and thankfully his body accepted them easily enough, and with a final push I sent in the 2000 life force as his own started to get cannibalized by the traits integration. It certainly didn't take long for his body to begin violently rejecting the stuff related to the traits he chose to replace it with the new stuff, and as expected it was a gruesome and disgusting process. Once it was over I checked on him, and seeing that he was good to go let Baldrin wheel him out of the room as the entire place was sterilized with fire after I stepped out. Goodness, if that wasn't unsettling. And you say mine is to be much worse? Hammerlock asked, bothered by the sight. Objectively speaking, in terms of severity it goes Clay, you, Wainwright and the old man. You chose the traits related to the body and skin, so naturally those will be gruesomely changed. On a related note, I hope you like being bald, I said with a chuckle. His wasn't even the next one up for his upgrade, as the old man claimed that spot. The process was nearly identical to Wainwright's, though with a little less bleeding of the eyes. When he was done, Baldrin dutifully wheeled him away and the room was cleansed again. Now it was Hammerlock's turn, and as I said, it was like a scene from a horror show as his body swelled and his skin came off while his nose, ears, and eyes bled out dark gunk. Honestly speaking, once his skin regrew and with the exception to his missing hair, Hammerlock looked good, as his body that was already surprisingly fit was now cut like an athlete's. He too was wheeled out of the room before the purging flames came once more. Finally it was Clay's turn, who stoically took the deepest breath of knockout gas he could right away. Having seen the other 3 transformations, he was absolutely certain that he didn't want to remember the experience at all. Can't blame him either, as it really fucking sucked. Still, like before, the transformation went smoothly and that was that. I took the gas with me and took my house to Athena's, but didn't close it when I arrived, but left it cloaked. Getting awfully close to your deadline, aren't you? My best girl asked with a smile as she saw me leaning against the wall outside the archives. I've still got a couple weeks, besides I come bearing gifts. I have for you some nifty traits, but if you don't want them I guess I could just keep them to myself, I said playfully. Her face lit up in a wide smile. Absolutely not, how could you ever take back a gift you offered? She asked, playing along. Meh, I'll deal with it, I said with a shrug. I suppose you didn't come all this way just for this, right? She asked, changing the subject. Right you are, I am also here to grab that power trait of yours. A copy of it anyways, I said honestly. About time, I've been dying to know what would happen after you added a second Siren trait to yourself. She said, way more eager about this than even the traits I brought her. Let's give you those traits first. I brought the knockout gas since the process is kinda painful. You could also try doing it without being knocked out, but I don't recommend it, I say honestly as I lead her into my house. You aren't knocked out when you do it, so how bad could it be? She asked curiously. Oh, it's fucking terrible depending on what traits you do. The armored hide trait, for example, makes all of your skin come off. The traits you are getting are much more mild. You'll just bleed from your everything and have all of your muscles grow more powerful in a short span of time, I said, and she gaped in horror. Alexander Drake. Life Force, 1,429,390. Integrated traits, Gun Expertise Uncommon Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X3, Enhanced Senses Epic Grade, Omega Body Rare Grade X4, Supreme Armored Hide Epic Grade X2, Bone Regeneration Uncommon Grade, Corrosion Resistance Uncommon Grade, Energy Projection Epic Grade X2, Superior Vitality Epic Grade, Flame Breath Uncommon Grade, Regeneration Epic Grade, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Amphibious Lungs Uncommon Grade, Thermal Sensing Uncommon Grade, Water Resistance Common Grade, Active Camouflage Epic Grade, Iridian Engineering Expertise Mythical Grade, Quick Thinking, Efficient Lungs Rare Grade X2, Fire Resistance Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Fire, Legendary Grade, Shock Resistance Epic Grade X3, Energetic Sustenance, Shock, Epic Grade X2, Radiation Resistance Epic Grade X3, Energetic Sustenance, Radiation, Epic Grade X2, True Omnivore Rare Grade, Biometallic Bones Epic Grade, Elemental Body, Shock, Rare Grade X2. Quick Thinking Rare Grade, Hyper Flexibility Rare Grade, Strong Circulation Epic Grade, Minor Spatial Awareness Epic Grade, Buzzax Expertise Uncommon Grade. Stored Traits, Energy Reservoir Epic Grade, Clever Mind Uncommon Grade X4, Dexterous Hands Common Grade X6, Strong Nose Uncommon Grade X6, Strong Body Common Grade X4, Disease Resistance Epic Grade, Beautiful Form Rare Grade, Strong Vitality Uncommon Grade.
Thanks for listening.